awareness raising and sensitization, because our political group is willing to express a very clear position to support European farmers. I would like to extend a welcome on behalf of Manfred Weber, our president and head of the group, and the head of delegation of the Go Italy party. Right after me, Herbert Dorfmann will take the floor, is the head of the SVD in the EPP Group. You will have the opportunity, of course, to interact, and we will address the most important questions regarding the farming sector. The European People's Party is willing to pick up this message and give a very clear answer. Last year, our party organized a big event in Brussels, and it is now organizing events in individual member states to confirm our closeness to the industry and to the farming sector, and also to confirm the initiatives that our group is taking within the European Parliament, because we strongly believe in the role of farming and in the role of farmers. Today, we will elaborate on the connection between the farmers and the environment and the view of the EPP regarding European farming. We're going to hear from the farmers directly. Before handing the floor over to Herbert, I would like to thank Siegfried Muresan, who came here, and I would like to thank him for accepting our invitation. He is the vice chair of the EPP Group in the European Parliament, as well as chairman of the Working Group for Budget and Structural Policies. And I would like to welcome Christine Schneider, who's my colleague, along with Herbert, is a member of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, and our colleague Colm Markey, who's also a member of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, and who will talk about what we have been doing in this field. I will now hand the floor to Herbert Dorfmann, and then we will call the speakers for the first panel to officially cock this conference. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful day.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie.
Good morning, anyone. Thank you, Salvatore. Thank you also for organizing this conference along with the staff of the EPP. My name is Herbert Dorfmann. I come from the extreme north of Italy. I'm a member of the EPP for Südtiroler Volkspartei. And over the past 5 years, I've worked in Brussels as a coordinator, also spokesperson for farming in the EPP. So the goal of the events that are organized this week in Europe is not that of teaching a lesson, but actually to learn from our farmers, to listen to what our farmers have to say. Because I believe we are approaching the end of our mandate in Brussels, and we've got even too many lessons imposed from the top. We've come to the end of our mandate, and we've realized that often in Brussels there's this idea according to which, as Franz Timmermans said, and the Left and the Green Party, farmers must be taught what they have to do. And I believe that the approach must be different. It should be based on an active debate with farmers in order to get to a solution and above all, a strong agricultural policy at the European level and a stronger farming sector. We've come to the end of our mandate. As I said, we've experienced two global crises, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and I'm convinced that these two crises have definitely affected the agricultural policy. After decades, we have come to realize that food security and a certain food sovereignty is not something that we can take for granted. It is something necessary, though, and this, of course, has changed also the approach in Brussels, and I believe not only there, because over the past few months, we have gone back to a more reasonable policy, a more practical, pragmatic policy. For example, it was possible to express a vote against the proposal regarding the regulation of anti-parasitic products. So what's the state of play right now? I'm convinced that we cannot survive without sustainable farming, because sustainability is definitely important, but we must guarantee innovative farming that has new ideas and is also profitable, that guarantees income to those who work this job. We have to support young farming, and especially in Italy, this is a very important challenge that we have to rise up to. We must not forget, and I'm saying this because I come from amidst the mountains, that we should look at peripheral areas as well, the trickiest areas for farming. And there are many in Europe, and there are many, above all, in Italy. So a lot of things at stake. I'm very eager to listen to the two panels that we are going to have this morning. I thank you for being here, and I will hand the floor to our Vice Chair of the EPP Group, Siegfried Muresan. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, good morning. Good morning, and thank you very much for hosting us here in Italy, in Rome, this morning. We came to this event organized by our colleagues from Forza Italia and by the EPP Group in the European Parliament to tell you what we did in the European Parliament in the last 5 years to defend farmers, to tell you what our proposals are for the next 5 years, but primarily, as Herbert Dorfmann said, to listen to you, to listen what you expect from Europe in the next 5 years, to listen what the situation is, and to hear how we can help you also in the next years, because the EPP has always been the party of European farmers. We have always been the party of farmers at European level. I would like to thank, in the beginning, two very good colleagues, two friends, Salvatore De Meo and Herbert Dorfmann, for inviting us to Rome, for preparing this event and for organizing it. Salvatore De Meo is very active as Forza Italia colleague, member in the Committee on Agriculture. Whenever there is an issue impacting Italian farmers, Salvatore is there, he speaks up, and he makes sure that your voice is heard in the Committee on Agriculture of the European Parliament. Herbert Dorfmann is the co-ordinator of the EPP Group in the Committee on Agriculture. This means that every decision which the EPP Group makes on agriculture, on farming, is made under the leadership of Herbert Dorfmann, with this position that he has managed to secure with the support of the whole Italian delegation, of course. You colleagues, the Italian colleagues in the EPP Group, have a key instrument to influence the positions of the EPP Group on everything related to agriculture and farming. I would like to thank two colleagues who have come from far away from their countries to be with us this morning, Christina Schneider from Germany and Cole Markey from Ireland. They will also tell us about the situation in their member states, and they will also tell us about the work which they have done, because they have both been very active members of the Committee on Agriculture in the last 5 years. Dear colleagues, the situation is relatively simple. In the last 5 years, the EPP Group was the only group really defending farmers, agriculture and the rural areas in the European Parliament. The transition to the green economy, tackling climate change, becoming more energy efficient has become a main priority of the European Union in the last 5 years. This is okay. This is not wrong, because we all want to protect the environment. We want to pollute less. We want to tackle climate change. But we have seen that in this process, the left part of the House, the socialists, the Greens, they did not take into account reality. They were setting targets, not taking into account how to achieve it, how much that costs, how big those efforts are. And we, as EPP, we are the party which says, yes, we want the transition to the green economy, but we want it with the industry, not against the industry. We want it with the farmers, not against the farmers. And in this transition to the green economy, we have defended farmers, agriculture, rural areas, and we say if there is any cost, any impact of this transition to the green economy upon the farmers, this has to be known, it has to be communicated, and we have to work together to find support and to find solutions for the farmers. Farmers should not be left alone just for the Greens to fulfill some ideological goals. This is the difference between the EPP saying we want a transition to the green economy, but we want it in a realistic way. We want it in a way in which it does not bring up huge burden for SMEs, for industry, for farmers, and the left which says if the transition to the green economy affects industry or affects farmers, we don't care. We also care very much as EPP about the rural areas. And for us, the rural areas are about agriculture, but they are about more than agriculture. They are about having equal standards of living in a village as you have in a city. For us, rural areas are the place where farmers can produce. They are a key component of food security, but they are also a place where jobs are created in other sectors, where research innovation takes place. And this is why we want investors which come into the rural area to have the same conditions in a village as in a city. We want them to have good infrastructure, and of course we want people who live in villages to have the same access to education, to healthcare, to digital services as people who live in large cities. So looking ahead now, of course, as EPP, we want to make sure that the voice of the farmers will be heard in the next years in every decision which is made at European level. There should not be any single decision which has an impact on agriculture where the voice of the farmers was not heard before. And this was a key demand of our political group, and the European Commission, the President of the European Commission, has initiated a very comprehensive, orderly, structured dialogue now in which the European Commission, the executive branch of the European institutions, will be in a permanent dialogue with the farmers. We want no decision to be made on agriculture without knowing the impact of that decision upon farmers. And if, as I said, there are costs for you, we have to find together solutions to support you in that transition and to bear the costs. We want the reduction of bureaucracy. We want simplification, because we believe that the place of farmers is in the field, to produce, to do what they like, to do what they enjoy, and to do what is of benefit for society. Of course, we all have to respect rules, but if the bureaucracy that exists obliges you to fill in more documents than to be on the field and do what you like, then something is not okay. No additional regulations if they are not needed, and simplification, reducing bureaucracy. Then, of course, as I said before, Europe is known for having high consumer protection, high safety when it comes to agricultural products standards. We are the continent worldwide where the rules which allow us to know exactly what we eat are the best. So the quality of our food, thanks to your work, is the best. And what we have to make sure is that quality will be high in the future, but also that quantity is enough. We're seeing the war in Ukraine, we're seeing the difficulties of Ukrainian exporting to the global markets, we're seeing the needs in our neighboring regions, in Africa, in Northern Africa, in the Middle East, and it is in our interest for the people also outside Europe to have access to affordable food, because if they miss education, if they miss healthcare, if they miss food in Europe's neighborhood, for example in Africa, then those people will be in search of opportunities somewhere else, and including migratory pressure upon us, upon Europe, will increase in a way in which we might not be able to manage it. So it is we can only be safe inside the Union if our neighborhood is safe, if countries in our neighborhood are safe, and that also means the safety, the security of food, of agricultural products. So it is in our interest that the regions outside Europe are helped. So for this to be possible, high quantities are needed. As I said, Ukraine has more difficulties in exporting to global markets, so we have to make sure that we produce as much as possible inside the European Union. Quality is important, but quantity is important as well. Both are equally important. This is why we as EPP will always oppose and reject any measure which endangers the quantity of food production as well at European level. We should produce more in the future, not less. And then, of course, whenever there is a crisis, be it a natural catastrophe, something unexpected, a flooding, a bushfire, a drought, of course, the European Union is here to help. We have crisis reserves, and these should be activated whenever it is needed. In the end, I would just like to tell you that, of course, 2 years ago, we have all seen the illegal and illegitimate invasion of Russian armed forces into Ukraine. That is something that affects us all, and we should be in full solidarity with people in Ukraine, because the fight that they are fighting there is important for us as well. I'm coming from Romania. I would feel much more unsecure if the Russian troops would be at our border. So the fact that Ukrainians are keeping the Russian troops away from EU territory, from our NATO countries, that helps us a lot. This is why we have to help Ukraine with everything we can. And I would also like to thank Italy, the people of Italy, the Italian government, for being very clear and decisive in this. And while we are helping Ukraine, we should also make sure that that does not harm us within Europe. It does not. Because, as I said, in the area of security defense, what the people, the soldiers in Ukraine are doing helps us a lot. But we have to make sure that also in the area of agriculture, we can help Ukraine without creating any discrepancy in Europe. And this is why we as EPP Group took the lead in saying we want to facilitate the export of Ukrainian grains from Ukraine to where they are needed, because in most categories of goods, we do not need significant Ukrainian imports. They are needed outside the European Union. They are needed in Africa and the Middle East. So our role is to facilitate the transit from Ukraine to the areas in need. And this transit through Europe should be direct, should be fast, so that grains do not stay on local markets. This happened primarily in Central Eastern Europe in the last 2 years, but the risk exists that they flood other markets as well. And as I said, our duty is to help Ukraine export their grains from Ukraine to where they are needed, and we should make sure that if this doesn't happen properly, if those grains stay as they shouldn't in some local markets in Europe, the European Union has a capacity to react and to manage the process so that these temporary imports do not pose a risk to you as European farmers. This has always been our line. I will stop here, dear colleagues. Once again, thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you for listening to us, and primarily, thank you for speaking up. As Herbert said in the beginning, we are here to listen, and we're looking forward to a good morning, a good conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. And before I leave, let me now just introduce the panelists of the first panel. We will have this morning 2 panels. Before, at the end of the conference, we will have the highlight of the Deputy Prime Minister of Italy, leader of Forza Italia, Antonio Tajani, speaking to us. So we will have 2 panels now. The first panel is called Agriculture and the Environment, 2 sides of the same coin. As I said, we will talk about how we protect the environment by safeguarding agriculture and not by affecting it. I will invite now, please, the speakers onto the panel, and then Herbert Dorfmann will start the moderation. So the first speaker is Herbert Dorfmann. He will moderate this panel. He is, as I said, the head of the Südtiroler Volkspartei delegation in the EPP Group and the coordinator of our group in the Committee on Agriculture. Then Christine Schneider from Germany. She is a very, very active member both in the Committee of Environment and in the Committee of Agriculture of the European Parliament. We're very lucky to have her with us this morning. Christina, thank you very much for coming. Then we have 2 farm owners, Desiree de la Caridad Nieves and Caterina Ricci. And then the concluding remarks will be delivered by Francesco Battistoni, who will join us in a couple of minutes. He's a member of the Italian Chamber of Deputies and the Vice President of the Environment, Territory and Public Works Committee. I now give the floor to Herbert Dorfmann, and he will lead this first panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Siegfried. Grazie.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the speakers. I would like to thank all the attendees. I really like the title of this panel, and also I like the participants. We often hear about the importance of female participation in farming because it is still a very masculine world. And I think this is a good sign to have 2 women on this panel. It's a good sign for the future, a future that must be more and more supported by women. So thank you very much for coming this morning. So we're going to talk about sustainability, agriculture and environment. Well, I believe that we have abused the word sustainability over the past few years a little. Christine Schneider and I are native German speakers. In German, we say Nachhaltigkeit, which means keeping something in store for later. So to keep something for the longer term. And of course, if we want to do that, we have to make sure that there's no environmental degradation, but I have to make sure that there's also not economic degradation, because if a farm goes bankrupt, it won't be able to be sustainable in the long term, of course. So this combination of 2 factors is particularly important to me. Now, I would like to ask the panelists to make a 5-minute introduction. Let's start from Christine. That, as Siegfried Tourism said, is she's a member of the European Parliament, and she's on the verge between two very important committees, the Environment Committee, very difficult one, especially over the past 5 years, and the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development. She works for both. And she was a rapporteur, she still is, because the file is not closed, on a nature restoration law, which was the hardest battle that the EPP has fought with respect to the environment, with respect to farming. So the hardest battle that the party fought over the past 5 years. And Christine was in the middle of the storm, so please.
5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Herbert, for the nice words at the beginning. And the panel calls agriculture and environment two sides of the same coin. And I think that's really right. And normally we should not discuss this. But the really big problem in the last legislature was the policy of Vice President Timmermans and the left and the Greens, and nature protection through the set-aside of agriculture land is the wrong approach in our view. Nature conservation only works hand in hand with agriculture and forestry and not against them. And our farmers are a part of the solution and they are not the problem. You're probably familiar with two laws. Herbert says we have two laws we have to negotiate very hard. The nature restoration law and the SURE, the plant protection regulation. It was a package of two nature laws. And Timmermans and the Greens and the left in the parliaments wanted to enforce a ban on all plant protection products in sensitive areas. This would mean the end of agriculture in a lot of parts. I came from Germany, and in my constituency, wine is a very, very topic and famous thing. We produce over 70% of the German wine in my constituency. And if we have no plant protection in the sensitive areas, this would mean in my constituency that 40% of the areas are not more usable for agriculture. However, the SURE was rejected in the parliament, and we are very happy that Ursula von der Leyen declared that she will withdraw the law and we will have no more problems with this law in this period. Compromise was not possible in the past because of the really ideological ideas of the rapporteur from the Greens and the negotiator from the Greens. And as a Centre Party, as EPP, we are available for reasonable compromises. We recognize the problems of climate change and must tackle them. However, this cannot be achieved with bans and without taking the population, the farmers, and the whole society with us. As a lead negotiator, I was able to reach such a compromise on the so-called nature restoration law. We have fulfilled our responsibility toward nature as well as agriculture and forestry. It shows that we can do both hand in hand, but green ideological with the Commission draft was brimmed with cannot be used to make sustainable policy or organizing democratic majorities. And Herbert, you pronounced very well that sustainability is a very important thing. But if I look to the Commission and in the past to Vice President Commissioner Timmermans, I have the opinion they only discussed about ecological, but sustainability stays on three pillars: the ecological, the economy, and the social pillar. And the both other pillars, I think, often in the discussion is forgotten. Both laws symbolize the wrong approach of trying to achieve the objectives of the Greens to deal with bureaucracy and with bans. and they haven't really a view on our rural areas and what does it mean for our jobs and our farms. And the nature restoration law is not yet through the council, you said it, and it's not sure that it will get through the council. And that confirms the problems we have since the beginning of the negotiation of the nature restoration law. The fears those affected were being ignored from the Commission and the left side of the Parliament too long, and even through we managed to make significant improvements. And the law took the wrong approach, we think, right from the start. The approach by former Vice President Timmermans caused really a huge damage, on the one hand for environment policy, and on the other hand a huge damage for the whole European Union. If our concern has been listened from the beginning now, this must happen what happened in the past. The discussion about the nature restoration law and the farmer protests show that we absolutely need to reorganize our nature conversation and land managed policy. And this is why I'm in favor to revising the Nature 2000 directive in the new legislative period. Our farmers, they produce very high quality food, secrets say this, and make an important contribution to our food security in the European Union. They protect our climate, our species, our resources, and bring jobs to our rural areas. And for these, they deserve appreciation and recognition. And we want our farmers to continue their jobs in the future. And it's why it's time to have a change in our agriculture policy. We need to make policy together with our farmers and not against them. And we need to focus on our food security and economic perspective from our farmers. And we need to focus on incentives rather than bans. The EPP is fighting for that on many years already, and I have the feeling finally the most people come on their senses. The European Commission, for example, has initiated a strategy dialogue together with farmers to correct mistakes from the past. And they are trying to reduce bureaucracy and agriculture. And you can believe I make over 25 years agriculture policy, over 20 years in my national parliament. And I'm a little bit afraid to promise my farmers to say we reduce bureaucracy. But we have really the feeling with the strategic dialogue of the Commission that our president, commissioner president, and a big majority in the European Parliament recognize that we can go not further on with more and more bureaucracy. We have really to concentrate that you can do your job, and to do your job means to protect our area, to produce very, very good food stuff. This is your job, and I hope we can help you in the next period. Thank you for listening. I'm very open for the debate now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Christine. Proseguiamo con Desiree della Carità.
Now, Desiree,
Gestisce un'azienda agricola di Viterbo, di una ventina di ettari.
who runs a farm near Viterbo, nuts and olives in particular. She moved to organic farming 10 years ago. She paid special attention to sustainable packaging. We had a long, lengthy European debate on packaging, and so we are eager to listen to Desiree della Caridad Nieves. Also, in last year, she received the Women's Innovation Award, an important award given in Brussels to women who are highly innovative in agriculture. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. This is an important opportunity for us, farm owners. I thank Salvatore De Meo for inviting me. I'm very pleased to listen to you all, to your contributions. EPP is beside farmers, and we really appreciate this because we are going through a very difficult time, and so I was excited to accept your initiative. Yes, I am based near Viterbo. My farm is 22 hectares, and I do organic farming, and I received this important award. I think it is important to listen to people who made choices like mine, because this encourages agriculture and women farmers. We are quite a number. 1 in 3 products comes from women. We pay special attention to organic farming and also to the ethics of labor. So we run our farms with dedication. We look at the outside world and whatever is around us. Let me stress a point. Farm owners love the environment and our job. This is what we want to keep doing in the future. Farmers do not destroy or contaminate the environment, and this wrong, false myth must be dispelled. We want to keep producing for the environment too. I have been successful with organic farming, but I realize this can't be the only model for agriculture to produce food for the rest of the world and compete with the rest of the world. We are very small, globally speaking, so we welcome any system that helps farmers producing food for the population, for people. Thank you for your introduction. I think we can move on to Caterina Ricci. She too is a farm owner in the province of Latina, fruit and vegetables. Very important for this region. She's also vice president of a farming cooperative and councillor of the National Association of Producers. Desiree pointed out that 1/3 of foodstuff is produced by women, and they often come from diverse areas. The board of directors of cooperatives, however, are mostly filled by men, so I'm pleased to see women covering those top management positions in cooperatives too. Please, Caterina. Good morning and thank you. I decided to work for my farm because I love what my grandfather did and created. I did want cooperation because I don't think you can work on your own. It is necessary to cooperate with others, with other farmers, I mean. I am based in the Pontine Plain, a highly ferrous land with plenty of water, so we never have, drought problems. My grandfather used to say we are under the sky, so we have to be accustomed to climate change. But right now we see phenomena that didn't happen in the past. So what I want to say is that I'm proud to be part of the board of directors of this important cooperative. I'm also very happy because we cooperate and collaborate all together in the attempt to give an added value to the Italian sector. Thank you. So I suggest to open the floor and get questions from the floor, if any. Good morning, Camillo Vicinanza. I am a specialist in agrarian science. 4 years I funded banks, but now I see that credit institutions are not attending this meeting. Banks and credit institutions are very important for farms. They are a flywheel for farms. At the same time, you, European members of parliament, create obstacles to farms. So what do I mean by this? Unless you have a good bank rating, you can't access funds. See Basel II. Farms have no financial statements. They are assessed according to different criteria. But whenever a climate phenomenon happens, farms may have problems in terms of financial commitments, and they are entered into databases, which means they can no longer access benefits granted by the European Union or by the regions or by the state. I would like to break this vicious circle. When a farm suffers from drought, from other natural phenomena, why aren't they allowed to access bank funds and loans? Raffaele Gagliardi, President of the Environment Committee of the City of Fondi, an agricultural area. I have two questions. How do you combine sustainability and productivity? I don't think this is easy. And what do farms think of the European Union measures put in place to favor agriculture?
You can say something, but
I try to say something. I'm agriculture policy and I'm not really a financial policy, but I have a great discussion about these things you said since the beginning of the nature restoration law, when in the Commission proposal there were 10% set aside of agriculture areas in agricultural lands, and I had great discussion with my banks and my constituency, because this means if these areas are in your farms, the land has not the same value than before, because if you have 10% of the land where you are not allowed to produce anymore, this means also something about the value of the whole capital of the farm. So we have to look really careful what policy makes in the areas, and you are completely right that we have to look very careful in the future also on the financial question. That's right.
Seconda domanda, direi dare la parola alle due nostre imprenditrici.
Allora,
Thank you for your question. Sustainability, including financial sustainability, is the most important thing. Any business should be sustainable, or it goes bankrupt. Organic farming is expensive from several viewpoints, the cost of labor, cost of production, prices, retail prices. You don't make such a profit. It is not true that organic products are more expensive, and it is not easy to get the message across to consumers, but this is a business choice. I like what I do. I like organic farming. I think that in the area where I work, this is possible. It is true that organic food, if you like, belongs to a niche. Take extra virgin oil, highly successful, but if costs were lower, it would be easy to reach out more people. So we need also consumer campaigns to understand the difference between products. We don't want to force people. You can't force people. It is important that the general population understands the changes that are happening. So we are in favor of certain production methods, but we don't want to force anyone to adopt them. You need the right condition across Europe for organic farming. This is a slow and stepwise process. What happens elsewhere? What do they do in other countries? Are we less competitive because our costs are higher? Why certain products are cheaper on Italian markets? I mean, several factors should be taken into account, and we wait for a response from policymakers. Climate change is a fact. We are more aware of the need to act now to slow down climate change, but we need also to make a quality leap in research to allow agriculture to be more sustainable, and also farms should be more sustainable. It's a challenge, and I think that research and innovation can help us. Farmers organized their protests in recent months. We need a different common agricultural policy now, considering, the viewpoint of stakeholders. That's why I praise this initiative. We have to listen to farmers. We no longer have, peasants. We have farmers, business farmers, doing business, whatever this means and entails. You can't decide for them. It can't be agriculture. I mean, is different from Greece, or in Finland, Calabria, or Alto Adige, different areas, different soil, land, regions, so everything should be applied to different settings. And you can't do harm to farmers. We farmers are well aware of climate change, but this is not our responsibility only. So we should decide what we want for the future. Do we want to lower production, be perfect, comply with every possible rule to be the best? And we already are. Because, for instance, in Italy, organic farming is very, very high. Italy is one of the leading countries in Europe in terms of organic farming, but what do they do elsewhere? We suffered a drastic climate change. The pandemic, don't forget the pandemic, because for 4 years everything was blocked. We farmers kept working for society. This should be recognized and acknowledged. We need to be appreciated like doctors. We went to work every morning, whatever it happened. Wedding, funeral, cold, hot, we go to work every day because this is the only thing we can do, and this should be acknowledged. It is very important. Farmers have a social responsibility that can't be ignored. We are essential for the development of society. Have you ever wondered what happens if farmers go on strike? How do you eat? So farmers need help when it comes to sustainability. We women are here. We work all the time, but we need help, both youth, the young generations, and women. Women find it more difficult than men to reach top positions, and also in our field, in our sector. And also when it comes to credit, a woman farmer should be supported, because we too have our families. And so we have to strike a life-work balance. We need help also in that respect. This is my comment.
Caterina.
È stata super esaustiva la mia collega. Io magari
Well, she was super clear. I will maybe make a more practical example. We supply products to the large-scale retail trade, and they always ask us to be sustainable. So our packaging is cardboard, and of course we try to adapt to sustainability needs. We try to reach break-even, of course, because as she said, costs are higher than the packaging we were used to before. We've got time for a second round of questions. I see a raised hand at the back and then one here. Good morning. A short question. We talk about EU and non-EU producers. EU producers are burdened by rules and environmental constraints, unlike non-EU suppliers. So how can we bridge this gap? Because, of course, this implies a production problem, because we are talking about a global market. So in Europe, we are overwhelmed by products coming from abroad that are not subject to the same stringent rules our products are subject to. So what can be done in this regard? There's another question here, second row. And then a third question, and then unfortunately we will have to conclude. Good morning, everyone. I have a question regarding the financial sustainability that has a twofold impact. It's a question for Ms. Nieves. So, organic farming has a problem. Of course, it is less profitable, 15 to 20% less. In theory, it costs 15 to 20% more in terms of pricing. How can the new farm to fork help with financial sustainability of organic products? So less productivity and higher prices. And the question for Ms. Ricci. Well, I was very interested in the packaging you mentioned, so the additional costs for fruit and vegetables. I come from the industrial world. I'm an advisor, because large-scale retail traders are often asking for things but are not ready to pay. So how can the farm-to-fork strategy help in this regard? So France has introduced quarterly negotiations. Farmers are immediately given some compensation for increased costs. So what do you expect in terms of financial sustainability for organic products and for new packaging? We agree on the environmental questions, but it's important that people like you work in the fields can live comfortably. We've got a couple of questions here. Very short questions, please, because we have to conclude. So I will take two more questions and then I'd rather stop. So third row here. Good morning. Well, we support farms to access funds, so National Recovery and Resilience Plan. We are encountering some difficulties because we believe it's not that logical to have coupled circular economy with farming, but not with the energy sector. So we can't help farms sometimes face certain problems that they have to face. Thank you. Last question here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Andrini. I'm in charge of the beekeeping department. We never hear about beekeeping. We, as beekeepers, are actually at the top of the productivity chain with our bees. We are encountering lots of difficulties, as you can hear on the news or read on the papers. I've been working in the organic farming sector for 20 years now. Well, our problem is imports of Chinese honey that is not controlled at all. We are subject to very strict rules with our honey. So I know that MP De Meo has been working very hard to help the beekeeping sector, but I think it's important for Italian consumers to understand the importance of consuming Italian products. And I'm not referring to honey alone. I think it is important to mount advertisement campaigns, or where it is said very clearly that we need to consume Italian products. The other day, I found a jar of honey, 1 kilo, in a supermarket at €3.90. So we sell for €5 wholesale. So think about it.
We delivered on the breakfast directive last week. So if it comes to honey, this is an important thing, and also maybe on the mirror clauses on the first question, imports from outside, and then we'll go on.
Yeah, thank you. You said it, Herbert, last plenary session we deliver about honey because we know the really problems that we have, for example, honey from Chinese, and it was labeled not as Chinese, and it was mixed with local honey, and the consumer looks on the label and thinks it's honey from Italy or from Austria. And we saw this problem, and we deliver with a breakfast regulation in in the last plenary, and so it's not longer possible to do this. The first point, the second point, mirror clauses and about farm to fork. We stand to the targets of the farm to fork strategy because Herbert and me, we negotiated, I think, 3 years ago. And we also think that it's important to use lesser pesticides in our agriculture areas. But since the beginning, we said we need an impact assessment to see how the targets will have influence on our food security in the European Union. Because the solution cannot be that we produce lesser and lesser foodstuff in the European Union and then we get it from third country where we know that the conditions are not the same than in our European countries. And we have no influence on this production. And the big fault, in our opinion, is that the Commission didn't deliver this impact assessment until now. And that was the reason we were against the SUA and also the nature restoration law, because until now, we cannot say, are 50% enough to save pesticides, or need we more or lesser? But the important thing is that we secure our food security, independent if we produce ecological or in a traditional way. We only must know how many area we need and what working tools you as farmer need that you can produce our foodstuff. And I think this was one of the big faults. And so the third point, that we have to look very careful what came out from other countries to the European Union. This is important for the competitiveness, because it's not the right way to say to our farmers, you are not allowed to use this pesticide or this fertilizer, or you do have to produce in this way. And on the other hand, there came foodstuff from third country who are produced with this pesticides. That means that's not a fair competitiveness, and that's not okay. So we have the possibility to look really to the contracts we have with third countries, so we can regulate it on this way. And the second point, I think, it's very, very important to explain it to our consumer, because every consumer in this room and outside decided with his choose what he will buy in the supermarket, in the shops, how agriculture will look in the future, and if he support his produce in his country and his farmers. And for us, it's also very important, the education in beginning in kindergarten, in schools, that you know what thing you choose, what you will support. And I think we have to pronounce more in the future and have to look really careful, because we can make regulation on the European Union, yes, but we cannot close our whole burden in the European Union, because in the European Union we also produce things to sell out of the European Union, and we cannot say we want to produce things and sell it on third countries, and on the other side we close our burdens when things come in the European Union. We have to look very careful that it's produced under the same conditions, and we have, as consumer, have to think when we buy something that we promote, that we support our farmers. I think this can function in the future.
Thank you, Christine. Then we have a very specific question on energy. I don't know if somebody's view is dealing with energy production.
Non produco energia, purtroppo.
I don't generate energy, unfortunately. So one of the problems for the sustainability of farms with the new common agricultural policy is agreed solar energy. We've got a beautiful landscape in Italy, but we've got lots of constraints, environmental, cultural heritage constraints. It's not that easy to overcome them. For example, in the area where I operate, well, there's not even an option, because even to build a fence to protect my field from wild boars, I had to wait for 3 years. So I started seeing wild boars in my field, and other wild animals that were actually eating the nuts we were producing, wolves as well. So actually my farm was turning into a zoo. So I wasn't actually growing crops for people, but for those animals. So I had to put a fence, and I didn't like it because I'm, on the lake shore. But I had to do that to protect my fields. Your question is, when we produce something, our products have an added value because we tell a story, a 1,000-year-old story. For example, the extra virgin olive oil or the nuts that are typical of our area. So with organic farming, we convey a message, not a message that is reaching everyone, but a message that is being appreciated. So we have to know how to tell a story. It's very difficult. It is not easy because, of course, we record losses for the first years, but one step at a time, we manage to tell a story. And to sell a product, it's important also to sell the story behind that product, because we are an extraordinary country, extremely rich in culture, and our farm production is also part of this wealth. So, of course, it is important to guarantee this added value, which is part of being produced in Italy, or being made in Italy. And, the Italian products are very successful. Every time an Italian product is sold abroad, our products are very much appreciated, organic or not, because we've got an important story to tell. And this is a message that we should always convey. And, of course, policymakers must help us, because we must have the necessary tools to make sure that everyone can do that. But, of course, we need help. We need to incentivize education, to promote education, because farmers are actual entrepreneurs, actual business owners. They have to be trained, they have to be properly educated to be competitive. I'm not into agri-tourism, but when tourists come to see you, they ask for a Wi-Fi password, and they ask for the story of the surrounding environment. So we need to have all the necessary connections and create a competitive country system. And this is what we should do. The Common Agricultural Policy, and I'm speaking for myself now, should support production costs, because they are saying that farmers account for 30% of the budget in Europe. Well, it was 60% in the past. So we didn't have so many constraints in the past, so many obligations, and we are paying for those obligations. And these obligations go to the detriment of our income. So we need to modernize our vehicle fleet and many other things that are required for modernity purposes. Well, they are welcome, but we are carrying the burden of all this. So we should act fast. The Common Agricultural Policy was not the best one. It was designed for scenarios of the past. COVID wasn't there. Conflicts weren't happening. So the Common Agricultural Policy should become effective starting from 2027. So we should rush to make sure it is properly amended. We said that we can't produce any wheat now, but we need wheat. So what's going to happen? Because wheat comes from all over the world. Argentina is a great producer of wheat. Brazil actually told Argentina that they were going to buy wheat from them. So it is important to encourage the production of wheat. We are too slow. We're going too slow. Climate change, wars, pandemics are actually running. So we must create a virtuous circle where we all talk to each other and say, well, very well, let's get back to work and act fast. Less bureaucracy, more action to make sure that we can save the system as a whole. Because as I said earlier, we need to eat. Well, we will need to import what we need and what we don't produce any longer. Thank you. One final remark. Well, I would like to answer the question regarding packaging. I'm answering as a farm owner. And as a member of the OP. Well, I trust very much the OP I belong to, because it's the whole sector that is going to suffer unless we stand as one. Well, large-scale retail traders are fully aware of the need to change our packaging if you want to be sustainable. And, of course, costs are different. The price to producers are not impacted by this. So we try to have a more streamlined pricing structure, a simpler pricing structure. We try to buy more to have lower prices. Thank you. Well, Francesco Battistoni should draw the conclusions, but unfortunately he hasn't joined us yet. So I will have to close now. Just to wrap up very briefly what we heard this morning, following on the lines of what Caterina said, sustainability costs money, and this cost must be covered. This cost must be covered, and we may cover it with public money in part, and the Common Agricultural Policy is doing that in part, but we can cover it also with the help of the consumers. And there's a big debate regarding value distribution across the value chain, because what consumers are paying for, as Katrina said, must not be all of it. So we have to see how value can be distributed along the food chain. So I think this debate was interesting and fruitful. So we're going to break for coffee now. We're going to meet back here at 11. Enjoy your coffee. Thank you very much.
Morning. How are you? You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
It's lovely to be here.
You have a cup of tea, Colin?
Yeah, I will indeed. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. It's a great story how you've transitioned from a beef and sheep farm to a dairy farm. How many generations are you here now?
We're the fifth generation here now, and it was, let's say, my parents farmed here. We were beef and sheep farmers, and it's in 2018 we made the decision to change to dairy. Thought it might be an easier lifestyle for us. It was a quick decision because we're not youngsters. To be milking your first cow at 49 was a big change for us. So we sold all our own stock. We bought 76 in-calf heifers.
And how did you find the transition to changing over to milking twice a day?
At the start it was a bit daunting with all the heifers. It took them a while to adjust, as Yvonne said, and it took us a while to adjust. Yeah. But it passed.
We find it easy now. I'm a townie, as they say. Living here 25 years, but I never milked a cow until 5 years ago, and I love it.
So you've all the family involved, 4 daughters, 5 women and 1 man.
Yeah, outnumbered in a big way.
And do people have different roles?
I suppose everyone has their strength on the farm, so we lean towards that. Ava does our grass measuring, So she loves that, going off for a walk with the dog and coming back. Jane does our genetics, so she helps picking out all the bulls and going through all that. Anna and Kate will milk the cows or help with the calf, so we could go away for a night. So it's a team effort. We couldn't do it unless we were all involved to a certain extent, do you know? They might want to milk anyway. You know, sometimes I'm saying, no, it's okay, I'll do it, go in. They're going, no, I'll do it. So isn't that great?
Many farms across Europe, our cows produce milk from indoors.
Yes.
Your cows spend nearly 300 days a year outdoors.
Yeah. Easily, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And you're very successful. You've won a Milk Quality Award.
We did. We were very lucky, very surprised. We're so new into it.
Yeah.
So in 2022 we won the National Dairy Council and Kerrygold Milk Quality Award.
But the National Dairy Quality Award is a lot around quality of milk in terms of cell counts.
It's more than that. It's about sustainability. I suppose the sustainability for the farmer, as well as working here on the farm. Sustainability for the environment.
Yeah.
But even prior to going to dairy, we've always been conscious of the waterways, of the land, to take care of it. We're mindful it's just on loan to us. And we're trying to pass on a better condition than when we even got it.
Hello there. How are things? Hi, Colin.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Would you like to go outside and have a look?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
So I suppose to have a highly productive grassland system here is the goal, and we try and make sure that happens by measuring the grass regularly, at least once a week, twice a week when it's a high producing kind of during the summer, and that allows us to make the best decisions on where the cows should go next and utilise the grass properly, because it is our most valuable resource here.
Absolutely. I think it's possibly somewhat unique about Irish farms, how we manage to utilise grass so much, the high protein that's in the grass in the summer, so we don't have to import protein feeds, and it's the most sustainable system. And how do you manage the grass in terms of fertilisers and...
Fertiliser and slurry is kind of the two main inputs to put on the grass to allow it to grow. We incorporate clover into all of our grass seed mixtures in recent years, so that really helps kind of in terms of the productivity of the grass, and it enables us to spend less money and have a less of an impact on the environment as well in terms of spreading chemical nitrogen.
Then when it comes to the slurry spread, it's a trailing shoe you use.
Exactly, yeah, so it's not affecting the atmosphere as much, it's not having as much of an impact on the environment.
It's really a lovely farm. I see numbers on the drinkers.
So we have a system here, we have all the paddocks labelled, they each have their own number, and that corresponds to then a map that we have in the dairy. So we can kind of put on there the level, the cover of the grass, and the kind of in priority of where the cows need to graze next.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
Oh, hello.
Have you seen the parlour yet?
No, I haven't seen it.
No, we'll have to have a look, sure. So there's 16 units. They're automatic cluster movers, so makes milking an easy and a nice job too, you know. So it's great.
So you're the lady that's responsible for the breeding and the genetics?
Yeah, I kind of look through all the bulls that you can pick from and pick the best ones suited to what we're looking for and the cow type that we already have.
And what are you looking for? What's the priorities?
So kind of the main things are an overall a good EBI, so a good economic breeding index, because that's kind of the foundations of a good cow, and then in particular looking for a good fertility index. Not looking for them to be too milky, that's just not the type of cow that we have here. We usually start milking the second week in February, and then we're drying off then November, December, and then kind of January. So towards the end of November, we'd be kind of coming into the kind of a quiet zone. So like this parlour then goes on its holidays, and so do all the cows. It's really important for them.
And so does the farmer.
Yes, important for everyone.
One thing about your farm is that it's set out to reduce all the labour on the farm and make the quality of life so much better. And it's so important in our farms all across Europe that we invest in them to make sure that they're labour efficient and people can have that quality of life. Because you won't have a next generation of farmers unless they have the same quality of life that people have in other occupations.
Yeah.
Because you breed a better cow that gives you a higher fat and protein, that gives you a better price for your milk too, doesn't it?
It does, and it really does come back to you, you know, that extra bit of time spending picking, you know, the bulls and matching up the, you know, the right bull to the right cow. So we breed enough just to have the Frisian replacements, and then the rest then would be like bred to a beef sire. So they'd be dairy beef calves. They go to our neighbour who takes all our calves, and he looks after them just as well as we would. Will we go so and see where everyone else is? Yeah?
Perfect.
Hello. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I hope the girls showed you around and gave you an insight to what happens on the farm today.
They did. I really had a really great day here.
So what's happening in the European Union with agriculture?
So many people in Europe are looking at agriculture and asking the question, is it environmentally sustainable? And for me and indeed EPP in general, I think the thing we want in all the European legislation around the environment that comes forward, that it's practical, that it works on farm.
Have the EU any plans in place for supporting farmers financially and making these environmental changes on their farms?
Well, we want to ensure that there's enough CAP money to help farmers make changes.
I think as a food producer in Ireland, it's hugely important that people, know what we're doing and how we're going about doing it, and we are trying to be as environmentally friendly, on the farm as we can.
The young people are the furthest away they ever have been from agriculture, and they don't understand to any depth of where their food is coming from apart from a supermarket shelf. Well, what is Europe doing to encourage young people to get back into farming?
One thing we want to prioritise is access to land, to ensure young people can get access to land, and to look at low-cost loans, higher level of grants for younger farmers to get them started. We looked at your farm here today where, let's say, the use of technologies made it more labour efficient, and we want to make sure that grants are available through the Common Agriculture Policy to allow those transitions to take place. When young people get involved, they embrace where agriculture has to go into the future. They're the ones that will take up those challenges and make the changes, and I think you've got that so right here on this farm.
Thanks a million, Colin. Take care.
We in the EPP believe in the European family farm model. We want to protect the environment, look after nature and ensure food security. We want to invest in technologies and labour-efficient systems that will inspire the next generation of young farmers and women to carry on the proud tradition of agriculture all across Europe.
Weil ich habe dann schlussendlich verstanden, wie wichtig es ist, dass kleine Landwirte, landwirtschaftliche Betriebe mit lokaler Gastronomie zusammenarbeiten.
Hallo, guten Morgen.
Hallo, morgen, Ulrich.
Hallo, Patrick. Hallo, guten Morgen.
Ja, willkommen bei uns auf dem Hof. Willkommen bei Pro Farms.
Dürfen wir dich zu einem Kaffee einladen?
Gerne, super.
So, bitteschön.
Was macht ihr da genau? Was sind diese Microgreens genau?
Also im Prinzip sind die Microgreens unterschiedliche Kräuter- und Gemüsesorten, die eben noch als Keimlinge fest verwachsen im Substrat eben abgepackt werden und dann so in die hohe und mittlere Gastronomie eben kommen und dort dann eben zur Dekoration, zum Würzen der feinen Gerichte dann verwendet werden.
Aber sonst bist du Jungbauer da, das heißt, du produzierst auch andere Dinge auf dem Hof.
Also ich sehe mich absolut als Landwirt, als Bauer. Ich komme hier aus einem typischen Südtiroler Obst- und Weinbaubetrieb und meine Idee war es eigentlich auch immer schon, etwas Neues, etwas Innovatives dazu zu holen. Und
wie viel Zeit investiert ihr in dieses Projekt?
Wir sind Vollzeit dabei und möchten das Projekt noch viel größer machen. Dann gehen wir runter und schauen uns mal unsere Anlage an.
Ja, gern, weil das interessiert mich jetzt.
Ja, kommt's mit.
Wieso macht ihr das eigentlich nicht in einem Glashaus? Wieso dieses Vertical Farming?
Aus mehreren Gründen. Einerseits sicherlich der nachhaltige Aspekt. Ich kann in dieser Produktion eben zu 100% auf den Einsatz von chemischem Pflanzenschutz verzichten, weil ich schaffe eben einerseits ein Ambiente, dass die Pflanze besonders gut wachsen kann, aber auch andererseits ein Ambiente, dass sich eben unterschiedliche Krankheitserreger nicht wohlfühlen. Dann eben kann ich bis zu 90% weniger Wasser verwenden, im Gegensatz zur konventionellen Landwirtschaft draußen, weil das Wasser immer wieder recycelt wird. Und das eben der wichtigste Punkt des Vertical Farmings ist, das ganze Jahr über, also vom Januar bis zum Dezember, regional mit kurzen Transportwegen produzieren zu können. Also im Winter ist es nicht mehr nötig, Pflanzen von weit her zu transportieren.
Und wie kontrolliert ihr das?
Also wir haben hier praktisch eine Handy-App, über der wir praktisch alles steuern können. Alle Grow-Regale, die gesamte Anlage ist ständig mit Internet verbunden. Und so können wir eigentlich von überall aus die Anlage kontrollieren.
Also halt wichtig, dass es auch auf dem ländlichen Raum ein ordentliches Datennetz dann gibt.
Also für diese Innovationen, da ist einfach die Infrastruktur wichtig. Internetverbindung gehört einfach dazu.
Wenn man da jetzt eine Klimabilanz machen würde für so ein Produkt gegenüber einem konventionell gewachsenen außerhalb, also im Gewächshaus, ist die positiv?
Würde das Produkt ansonsten vom südlichen Teil unseres Erdballs kommen und so viele Kilometer zurücklegen müssen, dann macht es einfach klimatisch gesehen mehr Sinn, das Produkt hier im Vertical Farming zu züchten. Wir haben schon über die Vorteile gesprochen, kaum Pflanzenschutz, Wasserersparnis, Unabhängigkeit vom Wetter draußen, aber natürlich das Thema Energie ist groß. Ich brauche viel Strom, um hier meine Pflanzen zu züchten. Es ist allgemein wichtig, bei Vertical Farming auf erneuerbare Energieressourcen zurückzugreifen, in unserem Fall Wasserkraft, aber natürlich auch Photovoltaik und viele andere Quellen, die dafür gut funktionieren würden. Wir entwickeln ein schlüsselfertiges System, was andere Produktionspartner, wir haben beispielsweise jetzt gerade im Moment einen auf dem Comosee, einen in Linz in Österreich, und wir bieten diesen Landwirten die Möglichkeit, unser schlüsselfertiges System zu verwenden.
Im Europäischen Parlament, wie befasst ihr euch da dann mit dem Thema Landwirtschaft und Betrieben so wie unseren?
Wir in der Europäischen Volkspartei versuchen, junge, innovative Menschen in der Landwirtschaft zu fördern, weil wir eben junge, innovative Menschen brauchen, um Europa auch in Zukunft ernähren zu können. Und uns ist bewusst, dass Nachhaltigkeit ein ganz wichtiges Element ist, dass Innovation ein ganz wichtiges Element ist. Und ich denke, dass gerade junge Menschen diese Dinge im Kopf haben, wenn sie Landwirtschaft betreiben. Und ich denke, dass dieser Betrieb genau diese Dinge miteinander vereint. Also Innovation, Nachhaltigkeit und eben Produktion von Lebensmitteln. Wir versuchen in der Europäischen Volkspartei im Rahmenbedingungen zu schaffen, die dann letztendlich Bäuerinnen und Bauern helfen.
Hallo Herbert, Grüße.
Ich grüße.
Hoi, hoi.
Alles gut?
Ja, selber auch?
Ja, ich bin zufrieden.
Wir bringen dir dort eine Kresse.
Ja,
ich hoffe,
schön.
du kannst etwas Tolles daraus machen.
Ja, das ist auch ein Versuch.
Ja, super.
Ja, gut.
Danke.
Ja.
Das ist der Herr Dorfmann, er will jetzt bei uns die Produktion anschauen.
Da schauen wir mal, was ich zusammenbringe.
Ja, super, danke.
So, Ulrich und Patrick, dann gehen wir mal schauen, was ein hervorragender Koch aus so Spitzenprodukt, wie ihr produziert, denn letztendlich gemacht hat, oder?
Ja,
Ja, bitte.
Bin gespannt.
Wow.
Schmeckt extrem gut.
Super.
Hervorragend. Wie ist eigentlich diese Zusammenarbeit hier zwischen euch und Herbert Hintner vom Restaurant so positiv zusammengekommen?
Damals bin ich hier mit einem Freund von mir dahergekommen zum Restaurant. Da habe ich mich zusammen mit dem Herbert zusammengesetzt und wir haben einfach über das Produkt, über die Microgreens, über die Kresse in der Gastronomie, auch hier in Südtirol gesprochen. Und somit habe ich eben die notwendige Motivation und Energie auch ein bisschen mitbekommen, das Projekt bei uns hier in St. Pauls zu starten. Weil ich habe dann schlussendlich verstanden, wie wichtig es ist, dass kleine Landwirte, landwirtschaftliche Betriebe mit lokaler Gastronomie zusammenarbeiten.
Sozusagen die perfekte Symbiose zwischen einem hochwertigen landwirtschaftlichen Produkt und hochwertiger Gastronomie. Also danke Patrick und danke Ulrich, dass ihr mir euren Betrieb heute hier gezeigt habt. Das war wirklich toll und wir werden jedenfalls im Europäischen Parlament und besonders in der EVP alles tun, damit so innovative Projekte in der Landwirtschaft weitergemacht werden, denn ich denke, wir brauchen sie dringendst.
Ja, vielen Dank und ich hoffe, wir können andere Landwirte dann auch inspirieren, da was zu machen.
Wir in der Europäischen Volkspartei wollen eine innovative und nachhaltige Landwirtschaft in Europa. Dazu brauchen wir ausreichend Budget, wir brauchen aber auch Offenheit für Technologie, Offenheit für Nachhaltigkeit und das bringen vor allem junge Menschen mit sich. Wir haben heute einen tollen Betrieb gesehen. Wir haben gesehen, wie junge Menschen imstande sind, tolle, nachhaltige und qualitativ hochwertige Lebensmittel auf unseren Tisch zu bekommen.
Dat is een topproduct voor ons. Het wordt lokaal gekweekt. Onze klanten weten van waar ons varkensvlees komt.
Hey,
leuk geweest. Welkom op de brasvaarboerderij. Merci dat ik mag komen. Blij hier nog een keer te zijn. Maar ik ben hier nog nooit geweest. Wat is dat hier eigenlijk? Hier zijn we nu op de zeugenstal. Ja. Hier hebben we 650 zeugen dat we huisvesten, waar ook alle jonge biggentjes geboren worden.
Mooi. Ja. Maar jullie doen dus eigenlijk van begin totdat ze naar een slachthuis gaan?
Ja. We doen zowel van kleine biggen tot de volledige groei.
Zeg maar, jij als kind reed hier ook rond met je tractortje? Hoe ging dat dan?
Hier binnen niet, maar dat was buiten. Maar eigenlijk wel, dat is iets dat van jongs af aan wordt een beetje meegegeven met de paplepel door de ouders.
Wat zeg je nu, de vierde generatie?
Vierde generatie ondertussen.
Mooi, echt een mooi familiebedrijf. Gaan we een keer op bezoek?
Ja, neem je graag mee.
Zeg, we staan hier in een nieuw stalgedeelte. Wat doen jullie eigenlijk op vlak van duurzaamheid dan allemaal?
Op vlak van duurzaamheid hebben we 4 aspecten die we aangepakt hebben. Dat is zowel het mestgedrag als de luchtwassers, zonnepanelen en heel wat regenwateropvang. Wat is er speciaal in dit stalsysteem? Is eigenlijk dat we de mest gaan scheiden onder de varkens. Dus de varkens mesten
onder de...
Ja, bovenop de roosters mesten de varkens. En dan is het eigenlijk een systeem waarin we de dunne en de dikke fractie scheiden van elkaar, waardoor er geen ammoniak of heel beperkt ammoniak kan vrijkomen in de stallen. Door het gebruik van die 2 systemen, dus zowel het scheiden van de mest onder de varkens als de luchtwassers, zijn we wel innovatief. We reduceren namelijk meer dan 80% van de emissies die terug naar buiten gaan. Op vlak van duurzaamheid moeten we echt wel de emissies zo laag mogelijk houden. Dus wij leveren daar ook wel serieuze inspanningen. Dus kijk Tom, hier zijn we nu bij de luchtwasser. Hier komt de lucht eigenlijk binnen via boven en passeert hij eigenlijk een biologie, eigenlijk een waspakket, waar er continu water over verneveld wordt. Dus eigenlijk waswater, proceswater. En de lucht wordt eigenlijk door het waswater geduwd, door het pakket geduwd, wordt gefilterd, komt dan terug vrij van ammoniak, geur en fijnstof.
Ja, want die buiten te komen. Ja, we gaan verder.
Super. Ja.
Ja, duurzaamheid komt ook terug in jullie voeder. Jullie gebruiken natte voeding, brasvaart, woord zegt het zelf. Leg ik eruit, wat zien we hier eigenlijk?
En als kwaliteitslabel gebruiken we inderdaad de brasvoeding van vroeger, de natte stroom eigenlijk. We proberen eigenlijk te werken met lokale aanvoer van producten die een hoogwaardig eiwitten hebben, of koolhydraten of zetmeel. Zoals de Veliers Geneverstokerij, die heeft draf over. Dit geven we aan de varkens. De aardappelstoomschillen, ook hier uit Deinze, dat geven we ook aan de varkens. Het zijn eigenlijk lokale producten, natte producten, worden aangelengd met een lange kern, aangevuld met tarweherst, om dan eigenlijk samen te gooien in één menger om onze brasvoeding tot stand te laten komen en dit even aan de varkens.
En die producten zien we hier dus in de silo's?
Ja, die producten worden hier opgeslagen in de silo's. Het zijn 6 componenten, dus 6 verschillende producten die we geven aan de varkens. We zijn momenteel in slagerij Mortier. Slagerij Mortier in Nevelen.
Zijn slagerij?
Ja. Slagerij van Cedric.
Dat klopt. Aanaan.
Brasvaar wordt hier verkocht?
Brasvaar wordt hier verkocht, dus het is een slagerij in hetzelfde dorp. En ons vlees wordt hier ook gekweekt in Nevelen zelf.
Zijn Cedric echt een korte ketenverhaal eigenlijk, want de varkensbedrijf ligt niet ver. Hoe valt het mee om met brasvaar te werken?
Ja, top, hè. Het is een topproduct voor ons. Hè. Het wordt lokaal gekweekt. Hè. Een kilometer hier van onze zaak. Hè. Het is milieubewust, hè. Het is milieuvriendelijk. Dan de varkens gekweekt worden. Het is mals, het is sappig voor onze klant. Het is diervriendelijk. Heel belangrijk. Onze klanten weten van waar ons varkensvlees komt.
Goed, Cedric, bedankt voor het bezoek. Merci.
Dank. Ja, merci. Bedankt. Dank u.
We hebben hier heel veel innovatie gezien vandaag, waar je ook Europese middelen voor krijgt. Hoe belangrijk zijn die Europese middelen eigenlijk voor jou en het bedrijf?
Die middelen zijn heel belangrijk voor mij en mijn ouders en het bedrijf. Dus ze staan in voor een deel van de investering.
Want voor ons de grote uitdaging op het Europees beleidsniveau is om die middelen zo groot mogelijk te houden. Om dat budget zelfs een stukje omhoog te krijgen in de toekomst. Als we zien wat er verwacht wordt van jullie als jonge boer ook, dan moeten we zorgen dat we allemaal natuurlijk kunnen blijven financieren en stimuleren.
Als jonge landbouwer vind ik het persoonlijk belangrijk dat er een prijsstabiliteit is. Dat er een rechtszeker kader is voor jonge landbouwers. Waarbij dat er het oog is op de toekomst voor diverse investeringen, voor het blijven bestaan van diverse projecten, zoals dat je vandaag hier bijvoorbeeld gezien hebt. Dat die inspanning ook gewaardeerd is en beloond wordt.
Maar dan verzorgen. Meer kan ik niet vragen. Bedankt voor vandaag. Het was superleuk.
Merci om langs te komen.
Tot de volgende. Het bedrijf van Louis en zijn ouders is voor mij een super voorbeeld van hoe dat we met Europese middelen landbouwers innovatiever kunnen doen werken, maar ook duurzamer kunnen doen werken. En hoe dat we hun positie in de markt versterken door bijvoorbeeld de korte keten aan te moedigen. De Europese Volkspartij gaat voor een landbouwbeleid met een steviger budget dat de boer respecteert voor de harde inspanning die zij iedere dag leveren.
Metsänomistajana mä odottaisin todella pitkäjänteistä politiikkaa siinä, että kun metsätalous on pitkän ajan niin kuin sykleissä, 80 vuoden sykleissä mennään puuston kasvatuksessa.
Sä oot Tapio syntynyt tällä tilalla, eiks vaan?
Joo, tää on mun kotitila. Eli 2022 meillä maatila täytti noin 400 vuotta. Ja siitä asti sitä on hallinnoitu meidän suvun nimissä ja tällä paikalla.
No se on kyllä pitkä historia. Oliko sulle ihan selvää pikkupojasta asti, että sä ryhdyt jatkamaan tätä tilaa?
Joo, käytännössä tähän on kasvanut. Mulla on 3 sisarta. 1 veli ja 2 siskoa ja veli olisi ollut mahdollinen, mutta ei hän sitten lähtenyt. Sitten koin sen ihan normaaliksi jatkaa tästä. Ja toisena mä kiinnostikin se, että sekä metsäpuoli että maatalous. Itse asiassa mä oon aika paljon muuttanut. Mä en tykkää urautua niin kuin perinteisiin. Että mä haen koko ajan uutta innovaatioa ja mietin, että miten mä voin kehittää. Me ollaan siis luomuviljan tuottajia.
Näin vuodenaikojen mukaan. Tietysti Suomessa on tämmöinen pitkä ja kylmä ja luminen talvi, niin silloin ei maatalouspuolella kovin paljon voi tehdä mitään.
Ei tehdä jo muuta kuin, että valmistellaan sitten jo seuraavaa vuotta. Valmistellaan niin kuin seuraavaa kautta lannoitteet, koneet. Kaikki mietitään valmiiksi, että kun huhtikuu tulee tai toukokuu, niin sitten aloitetaan.
Niin kuin luonto herää.
Niin, se on jännä semmoinen tunne.
Niin Suomessa siinä kestää noin 80 vuotta ennen kuin se puu on sitten valmis korjattavaksi, niin sitä ennen siinä on paljon hoitotoimenpiteitä tehty.
Joo, se on yleensä metsänomistajalle on se ensimmäinen 20 vuotta on se hoitovastuu. Joo. Ja sen jälkeen se käytännössä rupeaa pikkuhiljaa tuottamaan metsänomistajalle rahaa. Ei kaikkia puita kaadeta ja aina jätetään puustoa. Esim. Päätehakkuullakin niin tuottamaan siemeniä linnustolle ja tekemään sitä monipuolisuutta siihen tulevaisuuteen ja taimiainekseen. Että pitää olla sopivassa suhteessa kaikkea, että tämä homma pyörii. Ei voi mennä niin, että 2 sukupolvea kasvattaa ja 3 sen nauttii. Että vaan pitää olla tasaisesti ja uudistetaan tasaisesti.
Eli se on sekä luonnon kannalta että taloudellisesti kestävää. Miten sä metsänomistajana huolehdit metsän monimuotoisuudesta?
No me aina huomioidaan sitä, että siellä on monta eri puulajia. Ja sitten me olemme myös sitoutuneet suomalaisiin sertifiointeihin PEFiin ja FSC:hen. FSC on niistä korkein, jossa metsänomistaja vapaaehtoisesti suojelee 5% kokonaispinta-alasta ja sen lisäksi 5% tulee sellaiseksi, että sitä ei koskaan käsitellä.
Eli 10% metsistä jätetään niinku käsittelemättä?
Kyllä. Siellä ei tehdä mitään hoitotoimenpiteitä, ei hakkuita.
No tällä aktiivisesti hoidettuna nämä metsäthän on valtavan iso hiilinielu, mutta nämä on myös kestäviä raaka-aineiden lähde. Eli näillä niin puustahan voidaan tehdä kaikki, mikä tehdään öljystäkin. Ja sitten näistä puistahan käytetään niin kuin kaikki käytetään.
Joo, eli viimeiseksi myös sitten oksista 70% kerätään pois ja siitä tehdään energiaa. Ja lämmittää omakotitaloja tämmöiselläkin talvipakkasella. Harvennuksissa latvat jää aina maahan suojaamaan puujuuria ja luomaan monimuotoisuutta, lannoittamaan metsää. Mutta sitten päätehakkulla tai tämmöisessä viimeisessä sadonkorjuussa niin se kerätään pois ja se on energiatuotanto.
No nykyään metsään kaadetaan tällaisilla isoilla metsäkoneilla. Mikä ero siinä on verrattuna aikaisempaan systeemiin, missä käsin sahattiin?
No, nykypäivänä tällainen konehan varmaan vastaa, en tiedä onko 100 miestä. Että 60-70-luvulla kun tehtiin käsityönä, kaikki sahattiin, kannettiin, kaadettiin, mitattiin miestyönä. Mutta tässä yksi mies hoitaa käytännössä sen kaiken paitsi, että hän tarvii vielä toisen koneen, joka vie sen puun tien varteen ja siitä eteenpäin rekoilla.
Joo, ja näähän on tosi älykkäitä nämä koneet nykyään. Eli toi tosiaan esimerkiksi mittaa noi puut ja pystyy oikeastaan ehdottamaan, että mitä tästä puusta tehtäisiin.
Joo, miten se kannattaa katkoa, mutta kuski sitten varmistaa sen laadun. Ja kone, kun se mittaa, niin se on myös myyntitapahtuma silloin. Metsänomistajan kuutiot lasketaan siinä ja ostajan kuutiot lasketaan samassa kasassa, eli sen mukaan menee myynti myös. Ja nähdään paljonko puuta kertyy hehtaarilta.
Mitäs Tapio, mitä sä odotat päättäjiltä? Minkälaisia päätöksiä metsäpolitiikan hyväksi?
No, metsänomistajana mä odottaisin todella pitkäjänteistä politiikkaa siinä, että kun metsätalous on pitkän ajan niin kuin sykleissä, 80 vuoden sykleissä mennään puuston kasvatuksessa, niin päätöksiä ei voida tehdä pienin perustein, vaan sillä pitää olla oikeasti faktaa taustalla ja jopa maakohtaista faktaa. Sitä ylläpidettäisiin ja pidettäisiin se metsäteollisuus niin kuin terveellä pohjalla, eikä liian säännellyttä niin kuin rajoitteita ei saisi tulla ehkä ihan liian paljon siihen politiikkaan. Mitä te olette valmiita sitten tekemään tämän asian eteen EU:ssa?
Itse asiassa aina kun EU:ssa, niin kuin viime vuosina ollaan paljon käsitelty energiapolitiikkaan liittyviä asioita, ilmastopolitiikkaan, hiilinieluihin tai biodiversiteettiin, nämä kaikkihan koskettaa aina metsiä. Ja me EPP-ryhmässä pidetään tärkeänä siitä, että metsäpolitiikasta pitää jatkossakin päättää kansallisella tasolla, koska niin kuin me nähdään, niin olosuhteet vaihtelee tosi paljon eri EU-maissa, eikä voida ajatella, että kaikille määriteltäisiin jotenkin tiukasti samat säännöt. Ja me halutaan ennen kaikkea myös se, että on kansallista joustavuutta, mutta se, että ennen kaikkea metsän omistajalla itsellään on se päätösvalta, että miten hän haluaa metsiään hoitaa kestävällä tavalla. Toit itsekin esiin sen, että teidän suku on näillä mailla ollut yli 400 vuotta. Ja teillä on se paras tietämys täällä, että mikä täältä on luonnon kannalta kestävää toimintaa, miten myös taloudellisesti hoidetaan näitä metsiä niin, että yli sukupolvien nämä metsät kestää sekä ympäristö- että talouden näkökulmasta.
Se kuulostaa hyvälle.
Ja tärkeää on myös tukea innovaatioita tässä metsätaloudessa. Et itsekin kerroit kyllä, kuinka paljon olet itse kiinnostunut just siitä, että miten metsiä pitäisi hoitaa, miten uudet tekniikat kehittyy ja mitä kaikkea tuosta puusta voi tehdä. Ja mä uskon, että me ei ole vielä nähty ollenkaan kaikkea, että mitä puusta pystyy tekemään. Et se on täysin uusiutuva luonnonvara ja paljon lisää pitää investoida tutkimukseen ja tuotekehitykseen tällä alueella.
Kyllä. Ja olla hyvin laaja-alainen siinä, että mihin sitä voi vaan vielä käyttää. Ei pysty vielä arvioimaan ollenkaan sitä, että mitä ihmiset keksii.
Kiitos Tapio. Oli tosi mukava käydä tutustumassa tähän teidän tilaan, kuulla sen historiasta ja näistä sun tulevaisuuden suunnitelmista.
Ei mitään. Tervetuloa uudelleen tutustumaan metsätalouteen Suomessa ja aina olen valmis auttamaan.
Ne puuntaimet, joita Tapio aikanaan on tänne istuttanut, aikanaan hänen omat lapsensa tulevat korjaamaan ne puut täältä. Metsät luovat työtä ja hyvinvointia koko Eurooppaan. Siksi on tärkeää tukea metsänomistajien tärkeää työtä koko Euroopan tulevaisuuden hyväksi.
Demander des aides aujourd'hui, c'est beaucoup plus compliqué. La paperasserie est toujours plus importante et les aides toujours plus petites.
Bonjour Marc.
Bonjour, bienvenue.
Vous travaillez dur là déjà.
Quel métier, il faut alimenter les animaux le matin.
Donc la prochaine fois que je serai en route pour Bruxelles le matin à 7h, je
pensera
penserai à vous.
Ah, voilà. Voilà.
Et vous êtes combien alors sur l'exploitation agricole?
On est à 9 personnes qui travaillent sur l'exploitation. C'est un GAI qui a été créé donc entre un père et sa fille en 1986. Moi, je me suis installé donc en 89. À l'époque, il y avait 45 places de vaches laitières avec 200 000 litres de production laitière annuelle. Et après, ça a évolué. Aujourd'hui, il y a 310 vaches laitières pour une production maintenant qui a dépassé les 3 millions de litres de lait par an.
Vous pourriez nous expliquer ce qu'est un GAEC, parce que je pense que certains ne savent pas.
C'est groupement agricole d'exploitation en commun, c'est-à-dire où il y a plusieurs agriculteurs, agricultrices qui travaillent ensemble. C'est un gros GAEC, sachant que si on le divisait, étant donné qu'on est 8 associés plus un salarié, si on le divisait par le nombre de personnes, ça serait des exploitations tellement petites qui ne seraient plus vivables. Ça, c'est le gros avantage d'un GAEC, de le faire ensemble. Et c'est surtout aussi la facilité du renouvellement, la facilité de partir à la retraite dignement, d'être remplacé, d'avoir un week-end sur deux de libre. Ça permet aussi de partir en vacances.
C'est vrai qu'on a beaucoup de mal aujourd'hui à intéresser les jeunes à l'agriculture. Oui. Il faut aussi donner des perspectives pour la vie familiale et pour le quotidien des agriculteurs. Et puis d'un point de vue économique, j'imagine que c'est intéressant aussi de rationaliser les coûts, de rationaliser des équipements. Donc là, le GAEC, ça reste tout à fait à taille humaine et je crois que ça, c'est vraiment une belle invention. Vous avez beaucoup innové sur l'exploitation et c'est peut-être ce qu'on va aller voir maintenant. Voilà.
On est dans le bâtiment où il y a les vaches laitières. La grosse innovation, c'est l'automatisation de la traite. Il y a 4 robots, donc chaque robot a son lot de vaches. Et les vaches, elles se gèrent toutes seules, elles vont à la traite quand elles veulent. Elles sont paramétrées pour être acceptées à la traite ou pas, en fonction de la quantité de lait.
C'est un gros investissement pour la ferme?
Alors, c'est un peu plus onéreux. Par contre, ça permet de faire un bâtiment plus petit, puisque le robot ne prend pas beaucoup de place. Donc, il y a de nouveau l'économie de ce côté-là. Ce qui est beaucoup moins cher, c'est la main-d'œuvre. La traite est faite automatiquement, ce qui permet à l'éleveur de plus de s'occuper de ses vaches. Quoi. On le voit là.
En tout cas, elle vous aime, hein?
Celle-là, elle est amoureuse, hein? Le lait est analysé à chaque traite. Il dit à l'éleveur s'il y a un problème de qualité de lait.
Je vois que vous avez d'autres installations. Eh bien, ce bien-être animal, vous êtes déjà engagé dans ce domaine-là, quoi.
En notre installation, il y a les brosses où les vaches peuvent se brosser quand elles veulent. Oui, elles ont la brosse pour se faire des petits massages. Il y a aussi pour la propreté des pieds, on voit là-bas de l'autre côté ce qu'on appelle le Discovery. C'est un robot qui se promène tout seul et puis qui permet de tenir le sol propre pour que les vaches aient des pieds propres, qu'elles n'aient pas d'infection ou de champignons qui se développent au niveau des pieds.
Alors Marc, il y a un autre volet qui est vraiment important, c'est le processus CAP2R dans lequel vous êtes engagé et dont vous allez peut-être pouvoir nous parler parce que ça pourra peut-être inspirer d'autres agriculteurs en Europe.
C'est une étude qui est faite sur une exploitation à un moment donné pour calculer un peu l'impact environnemental que peut avoir cette exploitation. Le résultat, surtout dans notre histoire, là, il y a les prairies qui sont capteurs de carbone, donc qui sont positives. Il y a tous les engrais verts, les intercultures, les cipans qu'on fait déjà depuis longtemps, qui sont aussi positives pour dépolluer. Le gros souci qu'on avait au niveau de notre exploitation, c'était les émanations de gaz à effet, le méthane surtout, le gaz à effet de serre, surtout issus des fosses à lisier. Pour essayer d'améliorer ce gros souci-là, on a pensé méthanisation donc pour fabriquer de l'électricité à partir de ces déjections.
Alors, il y a les productions agricoles, mais il y a aussi la question de l'énergie.
2 fois l'avantage.
Alors, sur le CAP2R...
Bene, se possiamo prendere posto, chiedo gentilmente di rientrare in sala perché abbiamo un secondo.
Please come back because we are ready to begin the second panel. Muresan will introduce the proceedings of the next panel session, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Antonio Tajani, will join us at 12:30, so we have to stick to the time because we are waiting for Mr. Tajani, although we will have plenty of room for the general discussion. So, please.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. And dear friends, thank you very much for the first panel discussion. It was interactive. It was also very useful to us to hear what your concerns are, to hear what your concerns are, to see that you want to influence European decisions, that you speak up. Thank you very much. Now, the second panel discussion is about the future of Italian and European agriculture. We're looking ahead. What do you expect? What is good? What can be improved at European level? And we will have the following speakers with us. Of course, the moderator and the leader of this second panel is Salvatore De Meo. I invite him here. Give him a round of applause. He's a very active colleague, member of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, and he is the voice of Forza Italia in the Committee on Agriculture of the European Parliament. He will moderate this session. Then we have from Ireland, Colm Markey, who is also a member of the Committee on Agriculture. Welcome, Colm. Then we have Sara Paralupi, the director of Coldiretti Lazio. Matteo Bartolini, the Vice President of CIA Agricoltori Italiani, please. And in the end, arriving later, we will have Raffaele Nevi, member of the Italian Chamber of Deputies, the Secretary of the Agriculture Committee. I leave you with Salvatore, please.
Thank you. Grazie, Siegfried.
Thank you, Siegfried. We've just ended the first panel discussion moderated by Herbert Hoffman. We discussed about the relationship between environment and agriculture. Forza Italia and EPP believe that they are allies, not enemies. Now, I'm going to moderate the second panel discussion about the future of Italian and European agriculture. Raffaele Nevi is just joining us with Honorable Battistoni. Thank you for being here. Please take your seats. During the first panel discussion, we outlined our position in that environmental sustainability should always be justified also in economic and social terms. We listened to several farms. They confirmed that farms and farmers do want to achieve the objectives of a Green Deal that EPP and Forza Italia would like to rename as a good deal. We believe there should be a good agreement with the environment, a just transition, and these are the premises for us. That's why we think that farmers are the first in the fight against climate change. We shared a document with them in Bucharest during our Congress. EPP defined the key points that the next European Commission shall address. EPP is and will remain the largest family with which any other political family has to discuss, has to debate, not only to share top positions, institutional positions, but especially strategy lines. And strategy lines should also consider what has happened so far. During the first panel, the Vice President of the Commission, Timmermans, was mentioned several times. We believe he was responsible for ideologically outlining their strategies. They are, in theory, good, but then we fought about their implementation. So the second panel discussion will illustrate the most important steps. Sara Paralupi, Director of Coldiretti Lazio, is now introducing the topic of CAP. The Common Agricultural Policy still accounts for 1/3 of the European budget. CAP resources have declined. We have to discuss the topic of European financial resources because, yes, the Union does have plenty of resources, but the European budget is also funded by 1.3% of GDP. Resources are not endless, and this is one of the reasons why we are trying to understand how to finance defense and foreign common policy, and also agricultural policy, because we have great objectives in mind with the Green or Good Deal. So new resources, additional resources are needed. We asked the Commission not to take away resources from CAP for new objectives, and this is why we asked for CAP reform, as Sara is about to explain why this need to revise the common agricultural policy to offer new instruments and resources to farmers. Please. Let me especially thank Mr. De Meo. In the last couple of years, he has been very close to Italian agriculture through the European Union. So we appreciate what you did. Nothing should be taken for granted, especially when things are so complicated. We have gone through very hard years, the last 5 years. Let me say something about the latest reform. What does Italian agriculture need? Let's have a look at Italy. In the last, let's say, 4 years, the pandemic, the war, conflicts, if you interview consumers, they would probably say we need healthy food and we need environmental protection. Sustainability was mentioned several times earlier today. The CAP was established decades ago to offer European citizens food security and environmental protection. So the term sustainability has always been taken into account by the European Union and by the agricultural policy. Timmermans forgot about food security, in that his agricultural policy was almost entirely green, to the detriment of real agriculture, agriculture producing food. And we have come to realize how important this is during the COVID pandemic and during the Ukrainian war. The war has devastated and caused big fluctuations in the cost of production. We have realized we are not independent in energy and food terms. And this is why Italian and European agriculture, in different ways, should be highly productive to offer healthy food, food security, and environmental protection. Let me stress another aspect. Sustainability. Sometimes I wonder, I am also an agronomist, and what is more sustainable than a farm? Farms are used to recycling, reusing. No other economic system is so balanced in environmental terms. Now, the agricultural policy reform is based on data and figures. Clearly, we need to quickly revise the agricultural policy. Pandemic, COVID, costs of production now totally crazy and unpredictable. Climate change. Agriculture in the last 2 years has gone through drought, flood, heavy rain, everything. And this has caused both direct and indirect damage, like unusual insects. Asian fleas have already attacked other regions in Italy. So, this is a new phenomenon. So, sustainability is fine, but never forget production. Agriculture should produce in a balanced manner, allowing farmers to produce. What do we need then? We need to revise the reform quickly. We need simplified eco-schematics. They are too complicated. I see, people when submit their applications. It's kind of crazy. It is so complicated. So I think that farmers should be able to produce right their produce. So simplification, a bit less green, a bit more agriculture. We need to revise the 4% of land that can't be grown. 4% has to be deducted until the end of the revision, and that land should not be abandoned, because an abandoned land causes more problems. Farmers, as you know, are the first custodians of the land. Abandoning the land means fires during the summer, problems in winter, hydrogeological problems. In Italy, this is pretty common, especially where climate change, where the land has been abandoned by farmers, and now we have climate change. I would also emphasize animal husbandry, schematic 1. Let me go into the specifics. Italy is long and narrow. The common agricultural policy for some eco-schematics should consider the real setup of an area. As for Italy, everything was, based on the north of Italy, very different from the south. In the center or in the south, we have both bovine and goat areas that in themselves protect the land. So that you cannot apply, the same rules in the north and in the rest of Italy. There are some breeds that are going extinct, and they are important for biodiversity. As Timmersman likes to mention, you have to protect those breeds. So, it is important to preserve populations, breed in distant areas to avoid those marginalized areas to be abandoned. And again, animal husbandry, the use of antibiotics. We are realizing after 1 year from the single application that the median line that is popping up for Italy includes zero use or close to zero use of antibiotics. Fine, fine, but when an animal is sick, has to be treated. When we get sick, the doctor tells us to take an antibiotic, we have to take it. When an animal is sick, unless you treat them, either the animal dies or is very sick. It goes against the well-being of animals. Okay, let's get rid of pests. Fine, but we have to strike a balance. Two more things. Let's pay attention to young people. Young people need a great deal of attention from us. Rural plans, first settlement, fine, but young people are the future, and they have to access every possible opportunity to do farming. In conclusion, there is another factor to consider. We need to work and live in a country where imports are, we need to comply with the reciprocity principle when it comes to imports. This is the only way to protect Italian products. Italy made the Mediterranean diet a top diet. Everybody talks about, the Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean food. Let's protect it. How? Through our produce, with very clear labels. When you go to a supermarket, you can hardly understand what you are buying. Small writings, small characters, an incredible maze of names and nicknames, and so you don't understand what you are buying, indeed. So let's pay attention to reciprocity in every possible sector, including, in the flower sector. So transparency and food education are key. These are my suggestions. We do have a unique heritage. We wanted to keep producing by means of simple, easy rules, easily accessible rules, and any change should happen fast. Thank you. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Sara, for introducing several topics that I guess the other panelists will address. We have a very busy agenda, so I would like to ask also Nevi and Battistoni to say something at the end. With respect to Italy, they are members of the Environment and Agriculture Committees. For Forza Italia, they are responsible for agricultural topics. So now I would like to give the floor to Colm Markey from Ireland. He has been heavily involved with Brexit, the impact of Brexit on European agriculture, and I have a question for him. Sarah alluded to it, that is to say the generational turnover. Earlier today, we have met with a very young representative. I think that the European agricultural policy should encourage generational turnover to allow Italian and European agriculture to provide innovation and flexibility so that agriculture can be a leader internationally speaking. Agriculture is not secondary to anyone. Farmers are business people. They do business, and for this reason they are an integral and active part of our economic systems. Colm, I would like to ask you, as an Irish person, as a European citizen, what about the next legislature? What should Europe do to support agriculture, as EPP wants to do also for our farmers?
Thank you very much, Salvador. Delighted to be here, delighted to be in Italy. As a farmer, I'm delighted to have an opportunity to listen to farmers and to ensure that farmers are listening. I think in fairness, the EPP are very good at listening to farmers. The other thing about being in Italy, I'm quite jealous of you at the moment actually, because I just rang home this morning and there was 15 millimeter rain last night. And normally in Ireland we'd have our cattle out. I'm a dairy farmer. Normally we'd have our cows in the fields in mid-February. And I'm looking at the weather you have here and I'm feeling extremely jealous. So as a farmer, I can relate to situations where, if you like, you have to deal with challenges and difficult scenarios. And it's not, sometimes when you're in Brussels, people don't understand that. I think it's important that the EPP have a strong voice in Brussels, because it's made up of people who understand that at farming level, it's just not like it is in a textbook. And you have to have the flexibilities and the understanding to adapt to the situation. I think Christine's comments earlier are very important, because for some in Brussels they set it up as the environment versus agriculture. And the last, if you like, legislature, the last mandate was very much a competition between agriculture and the environment. And ultimately in the last 12 or 18 months, that has become somewhat, as we'd say in Ireland, unstuck. It just didn't work out. Primarily because, if you like, there wasn't enough engagement with farmers on the ground. And I suppose the first thing we need to change for the next term of the Parliament is to make sure that agriculture is at the centre of the solutions to the agricultural problems. Too often, the last time round, everything was decided an opinion from the Agriculture Committee, but the ultimate decision was in the Environment Committee. And that's where the practical experience of agriculture was lost. I think one thing we need to change for the next mandate is that practical knowledge on the ground, practical farming knowledge is in the centre of the system, and that comes through the decisions are made in a lot of ways through the Agriculture Committee. The second thing I'd like to say is in relation to, if you like, you talked about the younger generation. Both the rural economy is totally dependent on the younger generation. It's estimated that agriculture is worth 537 billion to the European economy. And at the moment there's 10 billion farmers, or 10 million farmers should I say, are generating that. Currently we're saying that by 2040 there'll only be 6.5 million farmers. That's the loss of a third of our farmers. That's also the loss of the strength of the voice of the farming community. So it's vital that we turn that round and we ensure that the agricultural voice is maintained. And it's critical that we ensure that the next generation of farmers are, if you like, empowered to capture the changes that need to be made. The one thing you'll find about a young generation is they'll embrace the new technologies, the new ambitions that are needed. And we as an industry need to make sure that that generation get that opportunity. People talked about Mr. Timmermans and his ambition the last mandate. The reality is the ambition was to turn things back 50 or 70 years. You can't sell to a next generation. You can't sell them the past. You have to sell them the future. And the future surely is about embracing technologies and empowering the industry to develop true technology. And there's nobody better to embrace those technologies, whether they're apps on a phone, whether it's ingredients to put into feeds, whether it's different seed technologies to go into the ground. There's nobody better to embrace those technologies than the next generation. So it's vital that we empower that next generation to if you like, to develop our future. Now, alongside that, I suppose the other thing that has been a concern, and I think no matter what sector you talk across, is competitiveness and the competitiveness of our economy. And to ensure that a regulatory burden does not get in the way of our competitiveness. That's alongside the idea, if we become uncompetitive, the reality is product will come in from other countries at a lower standard and will be able to undercut us because they're produced at a lower cost base. So we have to ensure that, number one, our regulation is simple and streamlined, that it doesn't in any way, if you like, impact on our competitiveness, and we have to protect the high standards of European agriculture. There's not much point in having high standards in Europe if then they're undermined, or the viability of those high standards and the viability of the farmers producing those high standards is actually undermined by imports from third countries. So we have to protect our standards, we have to invest in our technology to ensure that our green is a future green, a productive green, and have to avoid, if you like, product coming in from third countries. In the next term, there's a couple of things that I think are very important. For one thing, I think we need a stronger agriculture commissioner. In the last term, we didn't have an EPP agriculture commissioner, and we had a very weak voice at the commission table. I'd like to see the next commission have an agriculture commissioner. I think that's critical. I also think we need to ensure, like what I say there, that if you like, the decisions are made that impact on agriculture are made at the Agriculture Committee. There's a logic to why things didn't work for the first 3.5 years of this mandate, or 4 years of this mandate. Because those who were lecturing farmers, were not listening to farmers. And I think we have to reverse that round. We have to try and streamline the legislation, and we have to ensure that that is, if you like, effective in the next mandate. From my own perspective in Ireland, I think just a little bit about Ireland for the moment, because it's a little bit about that message about how farmers can by getting involved, can make a difference. We run a grass-based agricultural system in Ireland. In the last 2 years, we've reduced our fertiliser usage by 40% by the use of clovers in our swards. We've reduced the use of concentrate feeds or imported concentrate feeds by putting more grass into the diet. We use technology of apps and grass measuring and a lot of technology to manage the grass in a way that it's consistent over the year. And as a result, we've reduced our external inputs. We've reduced our use of chemical fertilisers, replaced it with organic fertiliser. And that's what farmers who are given the opportunity on the ground to lead the change can do. I think it's important that we do that. But finally, I'll leave you with one last point, because I'd much prefer to get into the questions. There's really only one group in the European Parliament that understands agriculture, and that's the EPP. And I see it firsthand. I see when you sit in the Parliament and you hear people from the left, or you hear people from the Social Democrat or the S&D, or even to some degree Renew, they don't understand the practical implications on the ground for agriculture. And if it's with a strong EPP voice, we can hold the centre, we can hold the balance of power, and then we can ensure that the voice of agriculture is that central voice in terms of the debate. So it's critical. Like, I look at it, again, I'll just take one last example from Ireland and I'll pass over then. We have currently 13 Irish MEPs. 4 of those MEPs are independents and as a result are a part of the left group. When it comes to any serious debate in the Parliament, they end up voting completely, totally inconsistently, even the Irish interest, which is always an agricultural interest. So it's critically important in the next Parliament that we make sure it's central voices, in particular EPP voices, that are there, because there's where we won't be beholden to a purist green agenda. The EPP are all for the environment. We won't be beholden to a purist green agenda, but also it'll be a practical green agenda. We won't be beholden to people on the left. So I think it's critical that in the next Parliament we ensure we all must go out there and make sure that the EPP come back strong, because it's in all our interest that they do. Because we need to maintain them 10 million farmers in Europe. We need to maintain an agricultural voice, and the only people that will help us do that is the EPP. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Grazie Colm. La sua
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Colm, because your comments, along with what Christina Scheider said this morning, bear witness to the fact that the European People's Party has a very clear idea, regardless of our backgrounds, of what farming is, and how our committee will have to react to the challenges of the future. You have talked about innovation, you have talked about competitiveness. These are very clear issues that go hand in hand in farming. And you also gave us some ideas regarding what's the approach the European People's Party should adopt for the next life of Parliament. Our farmers will have to be supported in this complex but not impossible journey. Now, I would like to ask Raffaele Nevi, a member of the Italian Chamber of Deputies, Secretary of the Agriculture Committee, a representative of the Go Italy Party, to draw the conclusions. I would like to ask him what's the approach that the Italian government is adopting, and within the government, the Go Italy Party, after the unrest that we've seen in Europe by European farmers. So what are our answers to the questions, and what is our vision for the future? So good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Salvatore. I would like to thank all the attendees. It's a beautiful venue here. So over the past few years, we have worked very closely, and also at the level of the Italian government, because we are convinced about a very important thing. Farming can't be seen only from a national viewpoint. We should have a European vision. As Herbert Dorfman said, as head of the delegation of the EPP said earlier. So we want to share a vision of our farming, which is essential in our view. It is essential in Europe. We have stressed more than once the importance of producing more strategic raw materials that are key for our food chain. They are the starting point of our food chain, and also for livestock farming. When the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out, we witnessed a use of raw materials for geopolitical and strategic purposes. So Putin was actually bombing Ukrainian barns to prevent them from exporting raw materials, and above all to provide food to African countries in particular. And this actually triggered migration from Africa towards Europe, and of course this caused big problems, especially at the beginning of our mandate. Our government has been very careful in addressing the migration problem, and we managed to handle it pretty well. But there's no doubt that we need a long-term vision for the future. Our party, Go Italy, has focused very much on this question. Is there still need to produce agricultural products in Italy and in Europe? Well, the answer was clearly yes. We need to produce even more. So what should we do? We should help farmers to achieve this goal, which is, once again, not only aimed at increasing profitability. Of course, we need that. All the representatives of the sector know very well what we are talking about, but it is a strategic goal for our country to support our processing industry, because it is true that the day before yesterday we had a stock-taking moment with the main stakeholders of our economy. We focused on farming, and I pointed out the importance of supporting the processing industry. And through the processing industry, we have to support products that are made in Italy all over the world, so that we can guarantee an added value in terms of income for the farming sector and also for the processing industry. So for the first time ever, for the first time in history, we are gaining a new awareness. So the primary sector, the industrial sector, must be more and more intertwined and interconnected. And we pushed very much in this direction because we believe that the agri-industrial sector must be seen as a whole, and it can be a strategic asset also for economic growth and for the economic growth of our country. And this is a strategic goal that we are aiming to achieve. We have witnessed that by supporting the agri-food sector, we can also support exports, we can create new jobs. Our Foreign Minister, Antonio Tajani, has focused very much on the diplomacy of growth, as he calls it. So the Italian diplomatic network should be seen as a network at the service of business owners and entrepreneurs. And through that, we will be able to counter the Italian-sounding product problem, whose worth is more than 100 million euros. So anyway, this confirms that people really look for Italian products. So there's room for our entrepreneurs, for our business people, and for our extraordinary farmers who in certain areas of our country play also a social role. They drive more marginal areas. And then there's the whole question of the South. We from Go Italy are convinced that the South can give a lot in terms of farming, and it can give a lot, can contribute a lot to the development of the processing industry, so food processing industry. On top with tourism, this can definitely contribute to the overall growth of our country. Yesterday, I participated in a panel during the Vin Italy conference, and Coldiretti, our farmers association, signed an agreement with the tourist industry because wine tourism, agri-tourism are growing. So people are really keen on discovering rural areas, and tourist flows are more targeted now towards this uncharted territory, if we can call it this way. So this vision must be shared in Europe, must be brought to Europe. So I believe that the next life of Parliament, next life of the European Parliament will be strategic and key. So we must keep working together as we did over the past few years. And I must say that Salvatore was extraordinarily capable of sharing our ideas and our proposals with the European Parliament with the support of Herbert Dorfmann. We focused on this in Italy with Francesco Battistoni, for example, when he was Under Secretary for Agriculture, and I'm sure he will talk about this when he takes the floor. Then we scored some important results regarding the piece of legislation on new agrarian biotechnology. innovative technology that is natural, and I would like to stress the word natural. We're not talking about GMOs here. Technology can help us produce more by polluting less, using fewer plant protection products. So it's a winning strategy. Then we did lots of other things. You read about this, synthetic food. I won't add anything, but I would like to reiterate something that Sara Paralupi said earlier regarding the Mediterranean diet. We organized a campaign to say no to synthetic food, to follow a cultural path, because we want to move on with the production of food. We are not convinced that, we do not believe that in vitro food is actually an option, because it would be a cultural disaster, especially because we're talking about tasting food here. So food is not only to stop being hungry, but it's to feel extraordinary feelings, to have an extraordinary taste. Well, Salvatore will finish in a minute, but I get very passionate about things, so I could go on for ages. We just need votes to promote our ideas through extraordinary men and women that are at the service of our Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Raffaele. I didn't want to rush you into drawing conclusions, but we have to be very strict with the timing since we are waiting for the foreign minister. So I will hand the floor to Matteo Bartolini, who's vice president of CIA from Italian Farmers. Well, Raffaele, you said something in your contribution. The overwhelming majority of production is happening in internal areas and in mountain areas, and this is based on statistical data. Europe sometimes is adopting strategies to repopulate internal areas, but other strategies go in the opposite direction. If we think about livestock farming, well, farmers are having trouble keeping the stables open. They are not competitive any longer. So how can we reconcile these two things? So I would like to ask you about internal areas and how to support internal areas to relaunch the development of our farming. How many days to answer this question? 5 minutes. First of all, a few acknowledgements, if I may. I would like to thank you. I would like to thank the EPP for today's initiative. I'm very happy to be here. I remember the first time Dorfman invited me when I was appointed president of the Young Farmers Association in Europe. He stressed the fact that the European People's Party was paying very much attention to young people and to young farmers. They stressed the importance of having young people on board when it comes to farming. So this is what I'm still doing today. I try to keep giving my contribution. The scenario is pretty complex, as you've heard. It's a complex situation, given also recent events. Climate change, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the pandemic. So the farming sector cannot sustain itself any longer. So if we combine this picture with the Common Agricultural Policy for 2021 and 2027, and it was designed before these crises, well, the situation will be even more complex. The difficulty we see is a long-standing difficulty, though. Eurostat said that over the past 15 years, we lost approximately 5 million farms in Europe. We have less than 10 million farms today. And I think this goes hand in hand with the difficulties we heard about earlier, so food security and generational turnover. To answer these problems over the past few years, we have tried to think of new roles. For example, a multifunctional approach is something that many farms have adopted, meaning holiday farms or teaching farms or cultural activities, agri-nurseries. All these were initiatives that we have taken because we didn't want to address the real problem, the actual problem that, as Dorfman was saying earlier, is the right price within the agri-food sector. Since there's no economy allowing our farms to survive, well, we are calling for that 4% land more to work on. Well, I mean, I can't decide to work as a dishwasher to make ends meet. But what I mean is that we have to understand what an impact assessment is, but also what's our starting point, because 96% of farms in Europe are family-run, are family-owned. The weighted average is, no, sorry, the average size in Europe is 15 hectares. So to rise up to digital transition or green transition challenges, we have to have very clear in mind who we have in front of us and how we can support our farmers. We can do that in many ways. We can do that by supporting production and by helping them deliver products to our consumers. MP De Meo organized an initiative in the European Parliament to focus on the role of the markets and how markets can definitely create the necessary conditions for farmers to act more as a system. When a consumer is about to purchase a product in the supermarket, well, 6% of the money that they're going to spend is the gross revenue for farmers. 94% is lost in the transportation, supply chain. Well, 6% is before tax. So 1.9% is what farmers get after tax. This is a clear snapshot of the difficulties that we have to face. And we need to find solutions to our problems if we want to help farming survive in Europe, if we want to convince young people to stay in Europe. Then you asked a question regarding rural areas. Well, the situation there is even worse. It is true that farming can survive if it has an economic value. Well, in rural areas, this is what is actually missing. We can say a lot about the social, environmental value of farming in rural areas. Not that much can be said about production, about the opportunities for certain products to reach certain markets. If we include in this overall picture also the question of generational turnover, well, things get even trickier because green transition goals can be obtained through digital transition goals as well. When there are no young people involved in farming, it is very unlikely to take the opportunities offered by the digital world. I'm from Umbria, so from central Italy, so I'm really experienced in internal areas. I have a small farm, and if I live there, I offer several services, but when tourists come to me and ask for a Wi-Fi password, or I receive orders or reservations and bookings, and I have no bandwidth to actually keep up with the never and faster changing world, it will be very difficult for me to survive. If on top of this we add the fact that our farm is family run, so I live in the countryside with my family, when there are no family services for the elderly, for children, for young people, kindergartens, daycare centers, or transportation, well, it would be more and more difficult for me to make the choice to work as a farmer in rural areas, especially if I see that my colleagues that live in town have all the service they might need, whereas I have trouble having basic services that all citizens should have access to. So I believe that the challenge we will have to raise up for the future is, first of all, a budget challenge. When we hear about a budget, well, I hear things that are not that reasonable. Apparently, the common agricultural policy takes up 30% of the European budget. Well, the first pillar is what farmers get directly, but in the second pillar, there's also development of rural areas, investments, to which other sectors contribute, like trade or craftsmanship. And for rural development, there are also communities involved, so municipal, provincial governments that are making investments and that access that budget, so get money from that budget. So if you want to rise up to these challenges, especially the green transition challenge, in the meeting in Davos last January, Christine Lagarde brought a survey carried out by the European Central Bank saying that in order to rise up to the green transition, Europe would need 780 billion until 2030. We tried to win the challenge of green transition with the 389 billion that are actually the common agricultural policy, not the common environmental policy. Maybe we need to think about this and understand that certain challenges can be met only with an effort of our countries rather than allocating only 1% of GDP to Europe. Maybe we need more Europe to offer to those internal areas and rural areas the opportunities that they are still lacking today, that at the same time are a great value for social and environmental purposes. Thank you very much.
Grazie Matteo.
Thank you, Matteo. You have raised the question of financial resources. A narrative that's gained ground in the member states is that Europe has these endless resources, even if Italy is one of the countries that uses these resources the least for a number of reasons, for bureaucratic difficulties that are typically Italian. But the last point you raised, especially at the dawn of the elections that will take place on the 8th of the night of June, makes us face the idea that we have of Europe. So the European People's Party has a very clear idea of what Europe should be or is going to be. A Europe that is more interactive, that is engaging member states more, also through greater contributions. You mentioned Christine Lagarde, who brought a survey stating how much money is needed for environmental and green transitions. I would like to share with you the conclusions of a meeting with Mario Draghi. We talked about competitiveness. Contribution is 1%. Well, Mario Draghi assumed that if we want to keep rising up to the big challenges posed by Europe, and resources will never be enough, not even the next generation EU resources. And the European People's Party, and Antonio Tajani is going to join us, believe that the next generation EU should be an ordinary instrument rather than an extraordinary one. Otherwise, we won't be able to face these challenges in the future. Anyway, Mario Draghi believes that to face these more and more complex challenges, we will have to engage public and private resources for a total amount of 4% of GDP, of the GDP of every country. So this is just to show that we have a pretty articulate scenario. We have raised the question of the Green Deal, which is a fair deal, but that inevitably depends on financial resources. No one's denying that we should embark on this journey, but we should create the conditions to make this journey credible. Since we've heard more than once about the connection between farming and environment, which was the topic of the first panel, and the conclusions of this panel had to be drawn by MP Francesco Battisoni, I would like to ask him to come to the podium now, because he's recently joined us. He's the member of the Italian Chamber of Deputies, the Vice President on Environment, Territory and Public Works Committee. So I would like to hear from him what his approach was. His approach might seem distant today in his new capacity, but as a member of the Environment Committee, he has pointed out more than once that the environment and farming have a much closer relationship than we might think of. So, please, Francesco.
Grazie Salvatore, grazie.
Thank you, Salvatore. Thank you for organizing this event in line with Forza Italia's efforts. Our last meeting was held in Milan last Saturday. There would be so much to say. I was facing new themes. Herbert, Raffaele, Maria and others, we all discussed these topics together. And at first sight, we were faced with an oxymoron in that we moved from one decree to another, draft or flood, two sides of the same coin, affecting both the environment and agriculture. We could collect resources for that after the pandemic and the war. We had to face climate change. So talking about this theme, there is an initial assumption. There is no juxtaposition between the environment and agriculture. Some would like to see these two worlds as opponents, but it is very wrong and not true. They are allies. The first custodian of the environment is farmers. Farmers like working in a safe and healthy environment, and as a consequence, we will eat healthy, excellent food. We should all adopt a very pragmatic approach. Don't fall in love with ideology. We want to be very pragmatic, and we are. We allocated 4 more billion to agriculture with the recovery and resilience plan to help our agriculture. In other countries, they have 2 different ministries, one for fisheries and one for agriculture. In Italy, we have one single ministry for both, and again, I have come to realize, when I also dealt with fisheries, that unless people understand we are part of the European Union, but different activities, different businesses do have different needs. This is why we need members of parliament like you, people who are fully responsible for their actions. People say I will never abandon my area. No, you have to, because only in that way you can work in the best interest of Italy. As Antonio Tajani demonstrated in the past, in Europe he helped Italy achieve remarkable results, as you did, and the same applies to EPP for packaging, for instance, or allow the land to be grown again. So, food, diet is the key. We have to increase the production of alternative types of energy. How can you put all this together unless you strike a compromise between quality agriculture and environment? So I believe that the new parliament, the next European Parliament shall pay attention to this. Assessing these topics in a well-structured manner. In Italy, for instance, we recently voted an energy decree. The decree on eligible areas is still stuck with the State Regions Conference. Reaching an agreement across 21 regions is all but easy. That decree will be essential to streamline bureaucracy. It's always a matter of compromise between consumption, between taking fertile land away from agriculture and use it for energy generation. So there is a conflict between Lega Ambiente and Italia Nostra, for instance, in those areas where agriculture is impossible or very marginal. Those areas should be used for alternative energy generation. Agri-photovoltaic is not for all crops, and not all crops are covered by agri-PV technologies. Our duty, our task, again, is to strike a compromise, to reach a compromise. Another past experience. In spite of some conflicts inside the majority, we could submit a bill on organic farming. And as you know, Italy is one of the leading countries in terms of organic farming. Unfair practices. We approved a decree on unfair practices, very important for farmers to protect production costs that our farmers bear daily. So we have done a number of things. We are still doing, we are still working hard. Biogas, biomass, another incentive for agricultural income. Raffaele alluded to the Italian sounding. Europe too should give us some help in the fight against these problems. Today is the Made in Italy Day, and agriculture is the key player of the Made in Italy. That's why we have to find tools and instruments to protect our production. I think that what we did so far has been helpful. The Mediterranean diet, indeed has been a very good champion of the Made in Italy, although it was at risk. Italy, through a memorandum with CREA, introduced a more rational approach. We fought many battles with Salvatore, and we got attention for other products. So we sent out important signals for some niche products. So networking between the Italian and the European Parliament may be the key to help agriculture of the future. Let me also add one point. In addition to decreasing the burden of bureaucracy, let's facilitate access to credit, generational turnover, encouraging young people to work in agriculture, but unless they receive help from banks, how can these young people work? Very few measures are designed for this effort. Even the National Recovery and Resilience Plan says very little about this issue, and I think that young people should work in agriculture for a long time. That's why they need help, financial help. Maybe you cannot use certain funds because funds are in conflict with one another. So I have to say that both in Italy and in Europe, this is an unsolved problem. Minister Lollobrigida is focusing on this, I have to say.
Turismo e diciamo anche di tutto il turismo, le altre attività che si possono affiancare ai nostri prodotti, io voglio citare anche
another initiative is called Tourism in Roots by Minister Tajani. The idea is to invite our nationals who moved abroad and come back to Italy to appreciate our wonders and products. So thanks to this instrument, we can also help agriculture. I don't want to continue because I think I spoke for more than 5 minutes. So my plea, dear Salvatore, since I know you are so sensitive to our regions, is don't forget our needs. Central Italy is in a good position. Lazio and Umbria are good regions for this. Sara comes from the north, but we are taking advantage of her experience as director of Coldiretti Viterbo, and I am from Viterbo, so I'm very, in favor of such area. Very well, thank you, Francesco. You confirmed that MPs of Forza Italia and EPP interact and discuss a topic that does need this connection so that European agriculture is not isolated. Agriculture shouldn't be seen as a series of provisions and measures. We will keep doing this. Herbert earlier today stressed that this is a meeting to listen. We're trying to sink in with local farmers and their needs. Citizens expressed their solidarity with farmers. One concern is that we suffer from over-regulation, which would turn into a decreased production. The same happened with energy. All of a sudden, we realized that we depended upon others. We now have a plan in place for energy efficiency. You have to look beyond schematics. Energy can be decisive for agriculture's competitiveness. So today's meeting aims at raising awareness about these issues. EPP is trying to put in place actions in line with the expectations of farmers and citizens. They need quality agriculture, quality farming, safe products, price transformation. The Vice President of CIA showed that out of 100, only 6% goes to the farmer. The remaining 94% is distributed across the supply chain. And most plausibly, large supermarkets get, the largest share. I organized a meeting in Parliament to understand how wholesale markets can become a guarantee in the best interest of both consumers and producers. Wholesale markets play a strategic role in interregional terms. They exhibit agro-food produce from different regions. Packaging, conditioning, customization of products become very important to attract final consumers, but they bypass some steps, and I think we should insist on this. I hope that the next agricultural policy will consider this, will take this into account. We're all trying to see how this agricultural policy will change. Yes, we got there was the pandemic first, and then the conflicts, the war. Now, the nicest thing is self-management. I'm being told that the Deputy President of the Council of Ministers just left from downtown, so we have plenty of time to answer your questions as we wait for him. Muresan, Vice President of EPP, will draw the conclusions. I also would like to ask Herbert, as we wait for Mr. Tajani, to draw some conclusions. Any questions to the speakers? Here we go.
Salve, sono Camillo Vicinanza.
My name is Camillo Vicinanza. I am an agrarian specialist. For some time now I've become a Forza Italia member. Two quick comments. The agricultural policy of the future. What initiatives is Forza Italia or EPP taking for the common agricultural policy of the future? In the past, agriculture received 1 out of 4. For some time now, this was abolished. This has been abolished. Then they tried to give 1 out of 3. Now farmers have doubts and they would like to go back to 1 out of 4. This is plenty of money and farmers need it. Second, I would ask to amend articles of law concerning funding data. Every time a farmer receives some funds, data are entered into databases. If a farmer couldn't pay back those loans, they are reported and are no longer entitled to receive other funds. So I would ask to amend the legislation on this specific aspect. Thank you. One more. Mario Andreini. Bees. Does the agricultural policy apply to bees? Because every time we move, we use up gas oil, diesel. We bee farmers don't receive anything. Why? Bees pollinate flowers, and flowers will turn into fruits. Why don't we have any right to receive a contribution for gas oil through the agricultural policy? Before giving the floor to others, I can already provide some answers. This is something we are currently discussing. The next agricultural policy shall adapt to the current needs. For years, we got a very rigid instrument. Some schematics were considered the usual way. The novelty of this agricultural policy introducing eco-schematics, giving priority to farmers for a dynamic agriculture. As you know, in the past, farmers were funded just because they were farmers, but most likely they had never planted anything in some cases. So the agricultural policy should become flexible and resilient when it comes to economic resources. Bee growers are excluded, indeed, from this policy, and they too should be seen as implementing subjects of a common agricultural policy. Forza Italia and EPP can certainly interpret these new needs. I welcome Francesca Feppucci, colleague from Forza Italia, EPP. I don't know if Colm wants to say something, and then the floor to you.
Just trying to keep up with the translation. Firstly, in relation to the honey, actually, there was an initiative came through the Agriculture Committee in relation to the bona fide of honey, to make sure that the honey that was sold in Europe wasn't, if you like, added sugar to it and various derivatives put to it. So one of the key things we did in relation to honey was to make sure that European honey actually was, if you like, verified, and nothing was being passed off as honey that wasn't honey. So that was one initiative to protect the honey industry. I think we also recognise the importance of pollinators in general. So there's been a lot of work done in recent times to promote, but certainly to support the industry more, there could be more done. Now, secondly, in relation to just the broader point about initiatives for the next, if you like, CAP, I think one thing we recognise is that all too often the CAP, people have been asked to do more for the same money, and we have to identify new sources of funding. One of them, in fairness, we would have worked on over the last couple of years, the whole concept of carbon farming, where, if you like, people get rewarded for sequestering carbon in their soils. Alongside that is the whole sense of an enhanced carbon credit, which can come in the future, for where new money would come for public goods. And I think that's very important. The CAP was always about food security. So if we want other initiatives and other public good things to fund from farming, then we have to fund them from other sources. And potentially, in terms of the bees, that's one initiative. Secondly, in relation to the CAP budget as a whole, I think the first thing we have to do is protect that budget, because I think the point was made already that like there's too many draws in the budget. Obviously, own resource at European level is an issue. But we have to recognise that agriculture it plays a massive part in terms of food security. It also plays an enormous part in terms of protecting our environment. So the public good that agriculture delivers shouldn't be underestimated. And the point that was made earlier in relation to the fact that not all of the CAP money goes to farmers. So people need to recognise there's a broader public good there. But ultimately, the point about if we can't get it from the market, that's the first thing we have to do. We have to make sure that the market delivers for farmers. But secondly, we have to ensure that the CAP money that's there goes towards, if you like, protecting our food security, and additional monies, new monies, perhaps under a new heading, needs to come forward for the broader public good areas. And I think the whole concept of carbon farming perhaps has opened the door to that, but it needs to be on a whole broader base than that.
Grazie Colm. Io chiederei anche a Sara.
Thank you very much, Colm. I will ask Sarah as well before handing the floor over to Matteo. Can you answer the question asked by the beekeeper and the other participants regarding the Common Agricultural Policy and the need to review the Common Agricultural Policy? Yes, well, definitely yes, we should do that. I've raised a few points during my contribution earlier. So there are things to be reviewed in the Common Agricultural Policy. It is something we can't do without, and it's also pretty urgent. Regarding the gas oil question and honey production, well, gas oil is authorized depending on what a farm is actually producing. So what the beekeeper was saying is absolutely correct. We should start negotiation at the ministerial level and at a regional level to understand if, well, to ask for the availability of gas oil at a discounted price also for honey producers. Of course, we need to change parameters because we're not talking about tilling, we're not talking about crops, but it's actually distances that beekeepers have to cover to reach the fields for pollen for their bees. Matteo? Well, I don't want to boil things down too much. Well, the situation is pretty complex, so it is equally complex to find solutions. Since we don't have much time, I would like to briefly think with you of the future of agriculture by using technology, because when we talk about digital transition, when we think of it, we maybe forget about a number of options, a number of possibilities that are specific to this industry. I'm thinking about the Internet of Things, for example, the sensors that may help in reducing chemical inputs, but maybe also communicate something to the consumers. I'm thinking of the cloud, all the data of farms, given their small size, could be shared on an equal basis, could be shared fairly to become a treasure, an asset for the community. Because as I said earlier, we should shift the attention from the farm to the region or the territory in which the farm operates. So this can be useful because if we connect all these dots using, for example, blockchain technology, whereby we can guarantee the traceability of our products or the processing or working methods, and in part useful information for consumers to make the right choice. Maybe we will be able to support consumers not only in paying the right price for a given product, but also pick a product over another based on other values, not only price, other values that we are communicating to them. A few days ago, I was reading an article about a survey that was carried out in France after a few years following the introduction of the Nutri-Score. We know very well what our position is, but the interesting thing was that the Nutri-Score actually led farms and the supermarkets to have healthier products. For example, they made an example of popcorns over crisps, so no junk food. But basically, traceability had actually pushed the agro-industry of making more grounded choices, more reasoned choices. Maybe this could be an option also for consumers, because once become aware of the fact that that product is going to have a value of 6% for the farmer, maybe we could reward not only food producers, but also those who produce a public good that is environmental in value and also social in value, just to go back to your original question of rural areas. Thank you very much. I've been informed that Minister Tajani is just outside. There are journalists, of course, that are asking him questions. You know that his agenda is pretty busy given the difficult geopolitical scenario. So before handing the floor over to him, I would like to thank the group of the European People's Party, Beatrice, Gina, Anna, Matteo. I would like to thank Maria Spena, that supported me from Italy. That's a great strength of our party. We always cooperated to give farmers the utmost support and help. Waiting for Antonio Tajani to join us, I would like to hand the floor to Herbert Dorfmann for the conclusions. Is here, but is just being held hostage by journalists. So, Herbert, the conclusions are up to you, and then the final conclusions will be the foreign ministers. Thank you, Salvatore. I will be very brief. First of all, I would like to thank you because you worked very hard. And would like to thank everyone, all the attendees that were here. So many. We were really, really pleased. Well, I believe that this morning helped us confirm that those that will address the question of agriculture over the next 5 years will have to focus on two very important things. First of all, the review of the common agricultural policy. And this debate will start immediately after the elections. And of course, the reform of the common agricultural policy will imply also more funds. And we'll see if we're going to get more funds from our member states. The common agricultural policy should be reviewed in order to give money to those who are truly working in farming, for those who are innovative, those who are active, those who are young, those who are women. So we should support a strong and sustainable farming. And I think that the common agricultural policy could keep giving a great contribution. And the very last point, because I see that the ministers joined us. Thank you. Minister, for joining us.
Veramente solo una frase.
Just a couple of words, because of course I will leave the floor to Antonio Tajani. And then, the question of enlargement. The question of enlargement, we know very well what's the situation in Ukraine. We know that the enlargement to Ukraine is a challenge for European farming. And of course, enlargement towards the Balkans is maybe the alternative. That's a big challenge that those who will be elected to the European Parliament will have to meet over the next 5 years. Thank you. Before handing the floor over to Sigrid Muresan and our foreign minister, let me just tell our minister that we had a very intense morning. We highlighted our support to European farmers, in addition to what the European People's Party has been doing over the European countries, is to confirm that we are here, that we are fighting for countering climate change. So I will hand the floor to Muresan for his conclusions, and then I will leave the floor to Antonio Tajani for the conclusions.
Dear colleagues, Antonio, Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, welcome to the EPP Group, welcome to this meeting. Thank you very much for coming to us this morning. Dear colleagues, this morning was exactly what we, the EPP Group and the colleagues from the Italian delegation in the EPP Group hoped for. It was a morning of dialogue where we listened to each other, and as we told you in the morning, Salvatore, Herbert and myself, we came to listen. We came to hear what your concerns are, to tell you what the EPP Group, what Forza Italia, what Herbert, Salvatore and myself did for farmers and for agriculture in the last 5 years, and to discuss what the agenda for the future is. And the conclusion of the morning is, of course, we care about sustainability, but it has a cost. We want to pollute less. We believe in greening, but not against the farmers, but with the farmers. This is the difference between the left and us. We want to reduce bureaucracy. Your place as farmers is on the field to do what you like, to produce the high quality food that we are enjoying here in Europe, not to fill in a lot of documents. Europe enjoys high quality of food due to your work, due to your struggle. We see this, we appreciate this, we say thank you. We are going to continue to defend you. We are going to oppose any proposal which endangers your capacity to produce. And we're going to do this also in the next years together, the EPP Group and Forza Italia, with Forza Italia a cornerstone of the EPP Group. And let me also say this, in Italian, e tutto questo lo stiamo realizzando insieme, Forza.
And all this, we are doing this together, Go Italy and the European People's Party together. Go Italy is a key actor. Go Italy, Forza Italia, is one of the most important actors within the European People's Party, not only for farming, but for all the other questions that are key in protecting industry, in protecting small and medium-sized enterprises, in protecting our values of the central right forces. Go Italy has always been a right-of-centre party, one of the main leaders of the European People's Party in Europe. Antonio Tajani makes sure that Italy makes itself heard internationally. Antonio Tajani is the guarantee that Go Italy stays strong and is a pro-European country. It is a great pleasure to be here with him today. It is a great pleasure to call him a friend, to call him a supporter, and to call him a mentor. Antonio, thank you very much for what you have been doing for Go Italy and for the European People's Party. The floor goes to you.
Grazie, caro.
Thank you very much, Siegfried. When I participate in events organized by the group, I've been a member for so many years in my life, I always feel at home. And I also feel nostalgic. But let's keep working all together in this big family of the People's Party. I would like to thank Salvatore and Herbert for what they have done to defend the values expressed by farming in our country. Because farming is a key instrument for economic growth. It is a real economy instrument. This is part of the economic view. So finances to make money circulate, real economies to generate this money, to create this money. So industry and agriculture must go hand in hand to help our fellow citizens live better. Also, in terms of culture, in terms of values, agriculture is key. There's no better protector than of nature than farmers. Our battle, our fight against climate change aims to have less polluted environment and a nature that always has man at its center. Having nature excluding men would mean that we are a hurdle, an obstacle to the protection of nature. So this is a weird way of thinking of environmental protection and the fight against against climate change, which does not comply with our vision. We are environmentalists. We are not negationists at all. But we are not followers of Greta Thunberg's of Cardinal Timmermans' religion. We are in favor of common sense for the growth of our economy and to guarantee a better life for our children. We should hand over to them a better environment than what we found, what we got ourselves. So farming in Europe was regulated by positive or not so positive policies sometimes, especially with respect to the fight against climate change. Most of the rules we see we don't agree with because they are written by people who have never set foot in a stable or in a field. They were born in Bruges and have no idea what being an entrepreneur or a farmer means. So we have to listen to the voice of farmers. Otherwise, we would risk making big mistakes and go to the detriment of production, which is different from country to country. We can't think of having a common an agricultural policy for Italy like other big countries that have endless wheat fields. We've got lots of quality products, but many products, many different products. The geographical nature of Italy doesn't allow us to have big spaces like Russia, like Ukraine. So we have to look at our own reality. We have to have some flexibility. There can't be rules that do not protect this form of farming that is above all quality farming. The agri-industry sector is top-notch. Our know-how is famous in the world, and we have to make sure that the agri-industrial sector and the farming sector can be competitive together, especially when it comes to exports. Our products, our made-in-Italy products, account for 40% of GDP. So we have to keep working to promote exports to all the countries in the world. We have to win back the marketplaces that are actually dominated by Italian-sounding products that actually are successful because people love Italian products. I was in Verona yesterday. There were many foreign guests, and with the Italian Trade Agency, we reinforced once again the need to promote exports. I would like to thank all the Italian delegation of the European People's Party and the Südtiroler Volkspartei for the battle they fought regarding packaging. The question of packaging is key. It is key for pharmaceutical industry and for the food industry, for the export of quality products. So exploring new markets is absolutely important. We have to keep working in Europe to protect the sea routes. We are very much committed with the Aspides mission to protect maritime traffic through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, to make sure that our products are brought to the east or shipped to the east through that route. So farming support policies have many nuances. There are many things we should do. I recall that in Brussels a few years ago, we presented a number of projects for the protection of farming. The main problem is that of water. We often talk about many other things, but we don't mention water. I think we should keep working on the question of reservoirs, and we have to have more resistant plants, especially with rice varieties. A few tests are being carried out. And I would like to thank all those who contributed to research in this sector. Our farming sector and the technology backing it are key to consolidate our presence in African countries, for example. The Italian know-how is particularly useful in difficult areas affected by drought. So agricultural machinery can also be a factor that may contribute to the growth of the farming sector abroad, in addition, of course, to the supply of Italian farming products. I have exchanged views with the Chinese trade minister, and we pointed out the contribution we could give to farming in particularly difficult areas, thanks to our know-how. This is what we have done to support farming. Farming is not only growing crops, there's also the question of raw materials, of selling the products that are produced. Sometimes we have to come to terms with dumping actions. We are having a few problems here due to the dropping of wheat prices. Wheat coming from the east, so we are doing something concrete to protect Italian production, not from unfair competition, but from competition posed by Ukrainian wheat and wheat coming from Eastern European countries. So we should strike a balance to support our production. We are also working with many countries, with the US, with China to open up new markets, to pull down barriers to trade, because exports are key for farming. We are working with our Indian partners. There's a lot to do in this regard, but we don't want to let any market go to promote the export of our top products. A very last comment to reinforce the commitment of Go Italy, Forza Italia, and the European People's Party when it comes to the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is too often attacked due to multinational interests, but there are many reasons to protect the Mediterranean diet, not only our products, but because the Mediterranean diet is considered by every expert to be the best to guarantee prevention of cancer, but many other diseases and conditions. The Mediterranean diet is healthy. Is important to protect it. I'm thinking of winemaking, for example. For wine, sometimes we hear crazy things from extremists saying that wine is bad, that wine causes cancer. You just have to talk to any doctor. They will say exactly the opposite. Cardiologists are actually recommended to drink a glass of red wine over lunch and one over dinner because it's good for your heart. I'm no doctor, but I mean, you don't have to be an expert to read dozens of scientific papers or articles saying exactly the opposite of what these extremists and fundamentalists say, fighting against wine production for basically economic interests. They say things that are scientifically wrong. This is fake news that is basically harming our production. So we are committed to dispel these myths and also the crazy idea of the Nutri-Score, which is a form of unfair competition, favoring products that shouldn't be favored. It is important for consumers to know everything about what they eat. So it's much better to have a Nutri-Form, so to say very clearly what they're buying, by saying this is harmful, this is hazardous for your health, like you do for cigarettes that are objectively dangerous for your health, ends up being a form of unfair competition. And I'm deeply convinced that the Nutri-Score is actually the offspring of those who were thinking about competing unfairly with our products, because it has no scientific foundations. So we will keep fighting against it, because this choice goes against Italy. It's a choice going against our production and brings no positive results. So these are all the battles we are fighting. We got a few good results. I'm thinking about packaging, bearing witness to the fact that there are those who in Brussels and in Strasbourg are actually protecting the interest of Italian farmers, Italian producers, and European farmers and producers as well. And it's not by accident that these results are obtained, because there's a European People's Party that can actually defend with its numbers the interests of farmers, by protecting farmers, by protecting our production, and by protecting our health. This is why it is important to have the EPP still going strong and present, along with the support of the Italian party to further protect the interests of our country and of Europe. So over the next few weeks, over the next 2 months, during the electoral campaign, it will be important to reach out to our citizens to inform them how to better protect the interests of our country in Brussels and in Strasbourg. I'm an expert in what happens in Brussels. Unless we do that, we won't be able to protect our interests. We need more EPP. Coldiretti, president, but also the president of Confagricoltura, mentioned that the other day during the stock-taking moment organized a couple of days ago. We need a stronger EPP to protect our interests and to protect this sector. It is a question of numbers. It is a question of international support. As a secretary of the Go Italy party, I'm working to join forces with all the other parties that see the EPP as a reference point. We will run with the support of many mayors that are inviting their citizens to vote for the EPP. We are about to enter into an agreement with the Südtiroler Volkspartei to show that having a EPP standing united is key for our country as well. So it would be a mistake to have a fragmented approach. And our party has the duty to promote our European values and to keep all the forces recognizing themselves in these values together. And I'm sure that the Italians will appreciate, because to fight important battles like farming, it is important to stand united, but of course to rely on the numbers of those who are fighting, because fighting the right battles with armies that are poorly organized would end up being a battle out of principle. Like every competition, you are there to win, not to participate. And also the competition, the battle to protect the farming should be won during the next life of the European Parliament. Thank you very much. Thank you, Antonio. So I think we can call it a day. So I would like to thank everyone for sharing with us this event. We started this event by listening. As Antonio said, we need more EPP, we need more Go Italy, because Go Italy is the voice of Italy in Europe. I would like to thank the interpreters so that anyone could follow. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for coming.
We are trying to be as environmentally friendly on the farm as we can. Morning. How are you? You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
It's lovely to be here.
You have a cup of tea, Colin?
Yeah, well, indeed. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. It's a great story how you've transitioned from a beef and sheep farm to a dairy farm. How many generations are you here now?
We're the 5th generation here now, and it was, let's say, my parents farmed here. We were beef and sheep farmers, and it's in 2018 we made the decision to change to dairy. Thought it might be an easier lifestyle for us. It was a quick decision because we're not youngsters. To be milking your first cow at 49 was a big change for us. So we sold all our own stock. We bought 76 in-calf heifers.
And how did you find the transition to changing over to milking twice a day?
At the start it was a bit daunting with with all the heifers. It took them a while to adjust, as Yvonne said, and it took us a while to adjust. Yeah. But it passed.
We find it easy now. I'm a townie, as they say. Living here 25 years, but I never milked a cow until 5 years ago, and I love it.
So you've all the family involved, 4 daughters. 5 women and 1 man.
Yeah, outnumbered in a big way.
Sì, ecco, grazie. C'è un piccolo buffet, quindi se volete accomodarvi nella sala dove abbiamo fatto la pausa caffè.
Going off for a walk with the dog and coming back. Jane does our genetics, so she helps picking out all the bulls and going through all that. Anna and Kate will milk the cows or help with the calf, so we could go away for a night. So it's a team effort. We couldn't do it unless we were all involved to a certain extent, do you know? They might want to milk anyway. You know, sometimes I'm saying, no, it's okay, I'll do it, go in. They're going, no, I'll do it. So isn't that great?
Many farms across Europe, our cows produce milk from indoors.
Yes.
Your cows spend nearly 300 days a year outdoors.
Yeah. Easily, yeah.
Do
you know?
And you're very successful. You've won a Milk Quality Award.
We did. We were very lucky, very surprised. We're so new into it.
Yeah.
So in 2022 we won the National Dairy Council and Kerrygold Milk Quality Award.
The National Dairy Quality Award is a lot around quality of milk in terms of cell counts.
It's more than that. It's about sustainability. I suppose sustainability for the farmer, as well as working here on the farm. Sustainability for the environment. But even prior to going to dairy, we've always been conscious of the waterways, of the land, to take care of it. We're mindful it's just on loan to us. We're trying to pass on a better condition than when we even got it.
Hello there. How are things? Hi, Colin.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Would you like to go outside and have a look?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
So I suppose to have a highly productive grassland system here is the goal, and we try and make sure that happens by measuring the grass regularly, at least once a week, twice a week when it's a high producing kind of during the summer, and that allows us to make the best decisions on where the cows should go next and utilise the grass properly, because it is our most valuable resource here.
Absolutely. I think it's possibly somewhat unique about Irish farms, how we manage to utilise grass so much, the high protein that's in the grass in the summer so we don't have to import protein feeds, and it's the most sustainable system. And how do you manage the grass in terms of fertilisers and...
Fertiliser and slurry is kind of the two main inputs to put on the grass to allow it to grow. We incorporate clover into all of our grass seed mixtures in recent years, so that really helps kind of in terms of the productivity of the grass, and it enables us to spend less money and have a less of an impact on the environment as well in terms of spreading chemical nitrogen.
Then when it comes to the slurry spread, it's a trailing shoe you use.
Exactly, yeah, so it's not affecting the atmosphere as much, it's not having as much of an impact on the environment.
It's really a lovely farm. I see numbers on the drinkers.
So we have a system here, we have all the paddocks labelled, they each have their own number, and that corresponds to then a map that we have in the dairy. So we can kind of put on there the level, the cover of the grass, and the kind of in priority of where the cows need to graze next.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
Oh, hello.
Have you seen the parlour yet?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, we'll have to have a look, sure. So there's 16 units. They're automatic cluster movers, so makes milking an easy and a nice job too, you know. So it's great.
So you're the lady that's responsible for the breeding and the genetics?
Yeah, I kind of look through all the bulls that you can pick from and pick the best ones suited to what we're looking for and the cow type that we already have.
And what are you looking for? What's the priorities?
So kind of the main things are an overall a good EBI, so a good economic breeding index, because that's kind of the foundations of a good cow, and then in particular looking for a good fertility index. Not looking for them to be too milky, that's just not the type of cow that we have here. We usually start milking the second week in February, and then we're drying off then November, December, and then kind of January. So towards the end of November we'd be kind of coming into the kind of a quiet zone. So like this parlour then goes on its holidays, and so do all the cows. It's really important
and so
for them.
does the farmer.
Yes, important for everyone.
One thing about your farm is that it's set out to reduce all the labour on the farm and make the quality of life so much better. And it's so important on our farms all across Europe that we invest in them to make sure that they're labour efficient and people can have that quality of life. Because you won't have a next generation of farmers unless they have the same quality of life that people have in other occupations.
Yeah.
Because you breed a better cow that gives you a higher fat and protein, that gives you a better price for your milk too, doesn't it?
It does, and it really does come back to you, you know, that extra bit of time spending picking, you know, the bulls and matching up the, you know, the right bull to the right cow. So we breed enough just to have the Frisian replacements, and then the rest then would be like bred to a beef sire. So they'd be dairy beef calves. They go to our neighbour who takes all our calves, and he looks after them just as well as we would. Will we go so and see where everyone else is? Yeah?
Perfect.
Hello.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I hope the girls showed you around and gave you an insight to what happens on the farm today.
They did. I really had a really great day here.
So what's happening in the European Union with agriculture?
So many people in Europe are looking at agriculture and asking the question, is it environmentally sustainable? And for me, and indeed EPP in general, I think the thing we want in all the European legislation around the environment that comes forward, that it's practical, that it works on farm.
Have the EU any plans in place for supporting farmers financially and making these environmental changes on their farms?
Well, we want to ensure that there's enough CAP money to help farmers make changes.
I think as a food producer in Ireland, it's hugely important that people, know what we're doing and how we're going about doing it, and we are trying to be as environmentally friendly, on the farm as we can.
The young people are the furthest away they ever have been from agriculture, and they don't understand to any depth of where their food is coming from apart from a supermarket shelf. But what is Europe doing to encourage young people to get back into farming?
One thing we want to prioritise is access to land, to ensure young people can get access to land, and to look at low-cost loans, higher level of grants for younger farmers to get them started. We looked at your farm here today where, let's say, the use of technologies made it more labour efficient, and we want to make sure that grants are available through the Common Agriculture Policy to allow those transitions to take place. When young people get involved, they embrace where agriculture has to go into the future. They're the ones that will take up those challenges and make the changes, and I think you've got that so right here on this farm.
Thanks a million, Colin. Take care.
We in the EPP believe in the European family farm model. We want to protect the environment, look after nature and ensure food security. We want to invest in technologies and labour-efficient systems that will inspire the next generation of young farmers and women to carry on the proud tradition of agriculture all across Europe.